We thank you for listening. We thank you for viewing. We are live on Indie Volt Radio. We are live over most of the YouTube channels and the Facebook pages. And we deeply appreciate you being here. This might be a long night. We're not sure. We are going to go through this from start to finish. Now, we are not here remotely to dogpile. We're not here to lose our tempers. We're not here to do this stupid schoolyard BS drama that we've been dealing with the last 3 or 4 months. We are here to lay things out on the table as factual as we have or can prove, and to talk about the rise and fall of Terraform Comics. So we see that there's a lot of people already listening. There's a lot of people already in the chat. And again, we deeply appreciate you being here. We hope you're ready for a bit of a discussion. We will not be referring to the chat unless it's absolutely necessary. We have a lot of ground to cover, a lot of things to talk about. And I would tell you at the start that some of this might sound a little crazy. Some of it might be a little almost unbelievable at times. But we promise you that we've all been communicating with each other finally, putting dots together, and like I said, laying facts on the table. And some of us will have ending statements as we go out the door about everything. But right now, we're just going to go through everything chronologically as we experienced it, saw it, seen it. All of us here have had some sort of a role in this. And let the chips fall with the truth. Going to add Varian to the room right now. Varian, how are you? I should probably introduce myself to anybody who isn't aware. Hello, I'm Randy Zimmerman. I am a longtime independent comics producer and publisher. I'm currently reconstructing Arrow Comics back through Liberty Distribution. Varian and I have been doing Indie Volt Radio for over 2 years, almost 2.5 years now. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. And do we just want to start with you, or do we want to bring in other people? What do you think, buddy?
I think bringing in the group is important. I think everyone's here too. So,
well, then introduce yourself first, and we'll bring them in one at a time, and we'll go from
Hello,
there.
everybody. My name is Varian Grant. I am the founder of Indie Volt Media LLC. Started it over 4 years ago now. And I'm also a publisher of Last Call Comics. It's a company I co-publish, I co-own. I'm co-publisher, co-owner of that, and also the owner of Liberty Entertainment Distribution Group. And I was a founding member. I haven't said this in a long time. I was a founding partner of Terraform Comics. And how's that for old time's sake?
There we go. Yeah. Next, we'll bring Luke in. Luke, how are you?
I'm good. Good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Real good, buddy. Introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Luke Stone. I was the founder of Terraform Comics. Had this crazy idea and partnered with some pretty amazing people to try to get that started. But I'm also the writer and artist behind a book called Hybrids, the Sons of God, which is going to be on Arrow Comics now. Thankfully, there is a silver lining to the storm clouds that was Terraform. And I am the owner of Luke Stone Studios, which is an IP development company. So we're looking forward to popping out some great stories and content for people here in the next few years. So
next in, we're going to bring Meredith Logren. Introduce yourself,
you guys.
please.
I am Meredith Logren. I am the associate editor over at Geek Insider, as well as the executive producer of the Geek Insider podcast. I am a founding member of Terraform Comics. I am a founding member of Continuum Comics, and I am a writer. I am a social media manager. There are a lot of hats that I wear, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Great. All right. Well, next, we're going to bring in James Eric Hodson, Dreaded Dinosaur. James, how you doing tonight?
Hey guys. Wish I could be doing a lot better. We get a lot of flooding down here, so
sorry to hear that.
I'm dealing with a lot of triage, but yeah. My name is Eric Hodson. I'm one of the founding members of Terraform. I'm supposed to be creative director, in charge of making sure all the graphics and stuff look good, and go to on some of the design stuff. Creator of Dinosaur Man, creator of the Righty Righty Piper, Kilted Avenger comic book, and a few other little credentials along the way. Part of Indie Vault for the last couple of years.
Yep. And not Indie Vault, Terraform started out with 6 founding members. Is that right? The 5th member here is Mr. Brian K. Morris. Brian, introduce yourself.
Good evening. Hope everyone here and in the audience are well. I'm Brian K. Morris. I'm a publisher of books and comics, also freelance author, and broadcaster with the Rising Tide Broadcast Network, which I am the president. And I am one of the founding members of Terraform Comics too, although I couldn't say that for very long.
Right. And also part of Terraform was Nita Lanning. Nita, introduce yourself.
My name is Nita Lanning, and I am the last member of Terraform Comics to join this group. I am later a founding member of Continuum Comics. Currently, I am founder of Ragin and social media manager for Indie Vault Radio and Arrow Comics 4.0.
And also a member for a short time of Terraform Comics was C. Michael Lanning, your husband.
Hi, I'm
Steve,
C. Michael.
how are you?
Hey, I'm C. Michael Lanning, independent artist. I've done work with Silverline. Of course, currently doing work with Arrow. And yeah, I was a partner a short time for Terraform Comics. Not to mention had co-created a product that's featured in Continuum, which was also agreed upon during Terraform, called Reapers, co-created with Meredith Lockwood. So,
right. Now, in the timeline, where does everything start? Luke, you're at Starcrossed.
Yeah, so I had just come off of a very successful campaign with Hybrids issues 1 through 5. It was a bundle thing. I had worked with a fellow creator who gave me some tips and some tricks on how to kind of increase my funding, and we were able to be pretty successful with that. That had gotten me a little bit of hope, because to start the whole thing off, I had a desire to try to monetize my comics and my writing and drawing so that I could get off of our church's salary, because I pastor a small church, and when we got there, the church was larger than what it is now, and through different changes and things, that the financial responsibility to the church was more than what I was comfortable taking. So I wanted to make some changes in order for me to be able to do comics on more of a part-time or even a full-time basis. And so my initial conversations were with Joe Spicer, who still is a very good friend of mine over at Starcross. And I was like, look, there are certain things and kind of aggressive moves that I need to make in order to start making a living at this. And unfortunately, at that time, Starcross and a lot of the other creators weren't quite to that space yet. And it became obvious that in order for me to make some of these moves, I was going to have to step away from that. And I had some conversations with a couple of creators encouraging me to step away from Starcross. Some of those people were very disparaging towards Starcross, and some of them were they were just encouraging more towards what I was trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And so I understood that maybe the best idea was to step away from Starcross and either find a publisher that was already kind of on that track, that was ready to level up, if you will, and find other people, because I believed, and I still do believe this, that collaboration is the best way to grow personally, professionally, and the best way to achieve success. I still believe that. So I was looking for some of those opportunities, and then I was approached by a few people who said, if you decide to start your own company, I would be happy to come along with you. And so that got the idea rolling that there may be a future with some kind of a new publishing venture. And so I started having a conversation with a lot of people that I had partnered with at some point, and talked with them about, we had collaborated in some form, and it was people that I liked working with. And what I did is I created this big Facebook messenger group, and we started talking about kind of what the ideas were and kind of where we wanted to go with things. And I had this idea of doing a 3x3, kind of a modern day or US indie comics version of a Shonen Jump kind of publication, and some people were on board with that, some people weren't, and finally it came to this point where I was like, look, I just need to know who's on board with what we're going to do. As we were trying to figure out some of those, like who was going to be with it and who wasn't going to be with it, I remember the name Terraform actually popped in. We were trying to come up with a name for this publishing venture, and Chuck Pino came up with this name and the slogan, Terraform Comics, changing the landscape of comics. And I thought that's a great name, but that's a tall order. That's kind of a lot to, how would we do that? And so eventually we settled down to 6 members. There were 6 founding members. And once we had the commitment from the 6 founding members, we started to distribute roles and responsibilities. And I remember we were very clear about who would be in charge of what things needed to be done. And not everyone that started out in that first conversation, like we started to bring people in once other people kind of stepped out. We knew we needed somebody that was going to be in charge of distribution. And we knew that Varian had some experience with developing Liberty distribution. And so we got a hold of Varian, asking him to be that. Meredith had a lot of expertise with social media marketing. And so she came in as our social media liaison. Mm-hmm. And then we got a hold of Brian K. Morris, and because he had a great network already with Rising Tide Publications, he was at the time broadcasting every day and had a great connection with fans, and we needed a good face to the company. I was going to take on the role as editor-in-chief to maintain quality standards and kind of drive the direction of the creativity. We brought in Eric because Eric is a tremendously talented artist, and he was going to be the one that was going to oversee art direction and make sure that if it didn't make it through Eric, it sure as the heck wasn't going to make it through me, kind of scenario. And so he was in charge of all of those, any kind of publication that would go out, any kind of graphic that would hit the internet. It had to have the quality standard, and he was our art director. And then we brought in Rob Anderson as the logistics guy. That was kind of a wild card for me. Before I get going, I want to be honest with everyone. It was difficult for me to make the decision to have this conversation because for me, I do believe the command that we have in Luke chapter 6, where it says to turn the other cheek, that if someone takes your cloak, you give them your tunic. But I also believe that we're called to speak out and defend those who can't defend themselves.
And Luke, I think that would be best left as summation remarks. And I don't want to keep you from doing that, but let's follow a timeline here.
Yeah. But I wanted to say that before I started to say the rest of the timeline, because I don't want it to feel like I'm trying to defame. I'm just being completely honest with our facts.
And we're not here to defame. We're here to lay that all out on the table, like I said before.
Yeah. So I was having some conversations with a couple of other creators that I don't necessarily, they're not a part of this, so I don't want to bring them up. But one of the people that joined the ranks was Rob, and he had said that I want to take a backseat role to this. I'm trying to revamp my persona because I'm kind of known as the indie devil. We hugs and spanks, but I'm trying to do this kids book now, and I want to be a part of something that's bigger. He'd not collaborated in this way with other people before, and he was very interested in doing that. And he seemed very genuine to me. And so he came in to focus strictly on logistics, which would have been conventions and making sure that our Kickstarters didn't overlap, so that we could make sure fulfillment, everything happened. Because sometimes when you're trying to run multiple campaigns and multiple projects, it can get a little fuzzy. Mm-hmm. And so his job was to help keep all of those things, those solid, and on track. And so we had our roles defined, and we had agreed that we would work, if there was an area of passion, we would work outside of those realms. Mm-hmm. We would create a writer's room, and that we would have editors that we either worked with or that we would help edit each other. But everything would default back to the person who was in charge of that area, because
everybody had their specific duty.
Everyone had their specific gift and their duty and the thing that we were looking at. So that was that timeline is kind of how that worked out. And so It was April, May, June. It was May to June. We started having these conversations, and we
May to June
officially
2019, May to June 2020.
2020.
We were in the middle of the bug by then.
Yeah, we were in the middle of the bug.
Okay.
And so while other people were taking it easy, we had this ambition to let's take this opportunity to lay the groundwork for something that could be potentially amazing.
Okay.
And we had a lot of people that were looking at that time at Terraform as something that could be kind of a big deal. But the big question that we had is like, okay, so we have this slogan, changing the landscape. Well, how do we do that? How do we live up to that? And that's when these other conversations started happening. And so
now, wait, what other conversations are you talking about?
About what we do, how we do it,
your job description.
Not only the job description, but what are we going to make? Because there's basically three things a publisher needs. They need capital, they need an audience, and they need distribution. So how do we achieve those things? But how do we do it in a way that impacts the indie comics industry in a way that other people that are doing this thing aren't? How can we find that niche? And we really landed on the idea that we were going to develop our own IPs and publish them and produce them through this 3x3, which was basically, you take 3 different stories that are 24 pages, you break them up into 8-page segments, and you slam those 8-page segments into one issue. And then, so you have issues 1, issues 2, issues 3 that actually are 3 stories, and we're combining our audiences and basically a clever version of the Shonen Jump kind of thing. And so that's really, really what we started to focus on. And then as we focused on those things, we try to focus on those things, we kept noticing that our focus kept shifting and kept moving.
Now, before we advance any farther, anybody of the founding members want to add anything up to this point? Okay. Varian, where was Indie Volt at this point as far as podcasting goes? Do you remember?
We were just Indie Volt at that point. We had the Breakfast Buzz, but the show hadn't become Live Wire or anything at that point.
No.
And we were having some growing pains because we had launched Indie Volt TV, we had launched Indie Volt Radio by that time, and Indie Volt Radio took me by surprise because we launched Indie Volt Radio serendipitously with the bug. So
with what? What book?
With the bug. With pandemic.
Yeah.
So people
you were already playing. We were already broadcasting before the bug sprung up. Though we were broadcasting like a year before.
But our numbers started going up. Like
our numbers doubled. Yep.
Yeah. So for me, I had the way that I got involved with Terraform was that I would have people on the show. Now, Eric and I know each other. We've been friends for years. We've gone to conventions together, up and down the highway together. But so he had been on, and he had introduced me. He had introduced me to Rob at a convention. But just before that, actually, what had happened is how I met Rob was that I went to a convention, and there was a gentleman there who took issue with me, and he called me the N-word. He's a white guy. He called me the N-word, and I happened to be recording it when he did it, so it kind of went viral. And Rob reached out to me, asked me, "Do I want to come on the show and talk about what happened?" Because he wanted to put the word out there that racism in Comic Cons should not be a thing. So I was happy to do that. I went on the show, and he became somebody I could talk to. About 2 weeks later, I actually met him at MegaCon, and it was we would talk every day. He helped bring guests into Indie Volt. He brought in, as I recall, he introduced me to Meredith. I think, as a matter of fact, really the connective tissue between a lot of us would be Rob, other than Randy and Eric. And I mean, that's it. I mean, I've met Brian from, I've seen Brian on the road at cons, but everyone else, would be I met through him.
And I really got to know you through the Flint Comics paper and through the conventions that we were holding, through Chad from I don't
Sinister
remember the
Undertone.
name. From what?
Sinister
Undertone. Yes. Yep. He introduced me to you. You set up a table at the shows. We started talking. Then you started telling me you wanted to do a show. I said, you don't want to do a show. And then you told me about the internet radio. And I'm like, we probably need to podcast. So we started podcasting. All of that's archived over on the Indie Volt YouTube channel.
Yeah. And for me, so I think that's the way I got brought into the Terraform thing was I was told, hey, there's some conversations going on. Your name's being brought up. You might Luke wants to speak to you about coming on board this company he's starting. Yeah. And I gotta tell you, I was excited because I had never I've had a publishing company. I've had two of them. My first one did not work out. My second one is still going, but I thought, wow, it would be cool to have like partners that I don't have to make all the decisions. So I was excited about, being in a company with people that,
like-minded.
Yeah, like-minded people who had experience, and I had the opportunity to drive Eric crazy, which was something I was looking forward to doing, and
it's something you enjoy doing for everyone.
Yeah, and being distribution put me in a strange position because I couldn't do my job unless there were books. So I kind of knew that I was going to have to either take on more duties or just kind of sit back there and just, twiddle my thumbs. But that's how that happened. For me, though, I was excited to be there. I think I think I was soured on very quickly, but I wasn't the first out the door. And
there you go.
Yeah. as a matter of fact, I think that between Luke and I. I don't want to go too far, but so that's how I was brought into Terraform, and my job there was going to be distribution because of, again, I have the Liberty Entertainment Distribution Group company I started. I already have the expertise.
Now, was Liberty off the ground at this point? How far along was Liberty?
Liberty was off the ground. It was running. It had started. I had been sending my Last Call comics content through Liberty for the past 5 years at that point.
Okay.
So when a store would order books from Last Call, I would use Liberty packaging and send it just to get myself acclimated to the whole process, and it helped to get the name out there a bit. So it was running, and I was like, well, this is fine. This dovetails perfectly with what I'm already doing, and that's how that came about. But I know at some point, and like Luke had said, there were discussions about taking on other duties, and one of the things that, I don't know if I don't want to go too far, but one thing that I noticed
at this point, there's a logo, right?
Yep.
Eric's been working on a logo.
Well, I had purchased a logo to start with.
Okay.
And when Eric came in, Eric was like, that logo's not that great. And so Eric, we had 5 of us together kind of before Eric came in. Eric was one of those people. It's like, we're kind of looking at his work and we're like, I would like to work with this guy. And so to be honest, what we did is we kind of, the idea was to grab people that they were already doing what they were doing in the industry. Like where things would dovetail, so that it wouldn't be like you're taking on so much extra work, but that Terraform would become a part of what you're doing, so that we can kind of get there together, and we would cover some of those other things that maybe Varian or Meredith or other people couldn't do. We would be able to focus a little bit more on those areas and help each other get across that finish line, so to speak.
Okay. And at that point, I had seen Eric do a lot of different versions of the Terraform logo because Varian had showed them to me about what was going on.
Yeah, early on in the process, it was pretty smooth, and I did a lot of ideations. We were trying to come up with a piece of branding visual, and the group chose one that they liked, not necessarily my favorite in the direction I would go, but it was a group effort and it was a group vote, and we did the best way that we thought we could. And I thought we came out with something that would brand very nicely and carry that professional tone. And then shortly after that, it seemed like stuff started to really go off the rails because the focus started to really shift back and forth. We were having
by focus, what do you mean?
The focus on what the product was.
Okay.
So once we had the branding set, we still needed to have a product, and the product is a comic. The 3x3 was a great idea. I was certainly all for it. We were talking about how the work would get divided up and what the division of labor would be to make sure when we get a product to market. The focus didn't stay there. The focus started to shift to different products. We were having meetings upon meetings where we were speculating stuff that would have been, at best a year out, like how we're going to run a table at shows. Why are we running a table at shows? We don't have a book ready yet.
Now, were these regular meetings or were these sporadic meetings? Were they instigated by Lou?
It was supposed to be regular, but it started to feel like they were just sporadic. Like whenever Rob wanted something, well, we got to have a meeting.
So Rob was calling meetings.
Yeah, let me speak to that. So as editor-in-chief, it was my role to call meetings. And at this time, things were so new. I didn't want to be aggressive in the leadership because I didn't want to stifle energy or creativity. I've been in leadership roles, management roles for a very long time, as a pastor for the last 6 years. I lead a group of volunteers that all have different backgrounds and things like that. And so I was trying to use that same mentality. Let's try to get the best out of each person. And Rob called one meeting and was like, hey, let's have a meeting. And it's like, okay. But then he kind of started taking tried to take some of these leadership roles. And so I would like, no, that's not what we're going to do. But what wound up happening is we're all very busy. We all have things outside of Terraform. It was supposed to be, obviously our families first. Yeah. Whatever it is to provide for us was number two. And then Terraform would squeeze in there real tight to that number two because we knew we were trying to build something and make something happen. And we understood it was going to take a lot of investment. But what was happening was we would get a lot of meetings that were being called kind of arbitrarily, and that we would have to discuss things. And so we knew that we needed some kind of a product. The idea was that Eric would have something in it, I would have something in it, Brian and I would have something in it, Meredith would have something in it, and so that we could set out 3 or 4 issues of this.
3x3.
3x3, yeah. And we had already I had already been working with Austin Janowski, and he was supposed to be bringing over one of his titles. It was a one-off, and it's like, hey, this would be a great way, to have something that we can use to help him out, and we can also use to help generate a little bit of capital, because again, we understood that we needed capital, we needed distribution, and we needed an audience. And so we were already building an audience. Meredith was doing a fantastic job with that. And we needed a way to quickly build capital. But we knew that the primary way was going to be through this 3x3 because it was going to be all creator owned stuff that we owned. It was us. It was Terraform.
And Meredith, at this point, you were running social platform? Your mic is muted.
I was running the social media. I was developing them. I also built the website and trying to get everybody to send me in art and things like that. So sure. But I wanted to kind of go back a little bit. When I joined Terraform, I had a big question mark because I didn't know where I fit in. I wasn't in the comics industry. I'd been in publishing. I have been a writer, but the social media aspect of it was just like, okay, I can bring value to this.
Now, at that point, you were literally labeling yourself as the comic newbie.
I was labeling myself as the comics noob. In fact, a lot of people in this room had been on a couple of my shows because it was like that journey where, hey, I'm doing this thing. It's my very first time. Let's talk to people who are in the industry and bring that on. So that was always a persona because publishing I'm not new to publishing. I'm new to comics. And so bringing my experience into all of this was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. It's like, okay, I belong. So it made sense. And then having everybody collaborating at the very beginning was so smooth. I mean, we were talking to one another. We all had ideas. We had so many things that we could bring to the table that went beyond one person.
Mhm.
We, like what I could bring were certain strengths, especially in social media and outreach, community engagement and community building. And that is where I'm strong. So that was my role. And I was like, okay, good. And I don't want to jump ahead because I want to pass it back to Luke, but when it came to communication at that point, again, with the comics noob and everything, all of a sudden, with all of these meetings, there were so many groups, so many chat rooms, so many ways to communicate with each other that it was starting to splinter, where we would have like maybe me and Brian with Rob in one room. It would be me and Luke in one room. It would be me, Varian, Rob, but it was never at that point. It was almost like we weren't all in the room.
So group communication was starting to break down.
Communication was starting to break down fairly early on, I want to say.
It became a fire. Yeah, it became a fire. And so one of the things I noticed is as we go through this timeline, we're going to talk about a lot of little fires that we try to put out.
Yep.
And Meredith had an idea to put that fire out. She wanted to take us to Discord. That didn't work. It always wound up back on to Messenger, and it always ended up back to one or two people and someone else in the room in a process that I call triangulation. It always wound up back to that.
So separate people gathered together being told separate things.
Always.
Yeah, always.
Brian, anything you want to add in on this? You were a founding member.
Well, I'll outline my limited involvement. I'd known Rob for about 3 years. I had a Kickstarter campaign for a comic I was publishing, and that's where we got to know each other. Before that, I had worked for a small press company as their editor-in-chief, and the less said about that, the better. But it was a disastrous relationship that I'm still dealing with to this day.
Okay.
And then when I was invited to become part of Terraform, I thought, well, like-minded people all rowing in the same direction. I thought this would be great. And yeah, I can be the public face for this. And like Meredith said, I started noticing right away that communication was breaking down and a certain amount of segmenting was happening. It's like, why isn't so-and-so here? Why aren't we doing this? And I noticed that kind of early on, and I maybe, and that's one of the reasons I kind of, maybe I panicked or whatever, but when I started seeing other signs, I dropped out.
Well, let's get to that here in just a second.
Yeah.
But everything at this point is starting to break down. There's splintering going on, different chat
Pretty early
rooms
on,
happening all the time.
Yeah.
Is there any one unifying factor in the midst of all of this?
There was. I think when you start to look for the fires, you have to look for who's holding the matches, and the connective tissue there was Rob.
Who was calling the majority of the meetings at the time?
Rob was calling every meeting.
Okay.
Seldom did I call a meeting because I just didn't feel like we needed to meet that often.
Well, plus you were busy. You were working on hybrids and your ministry.
Yeah, and trying to start a company.
Yeah.
Many of the conversations I was trying to have was either with new talent that we might want to collaborate with, or with our own members to get our own IPs created. In fact, that was one of the things that really was, I think, the like really at the core of Brian's departure, we had been working on Scarlet Trace, a pulp story that I was very excited to work on.
That was going to go into 3x3.
That was going to go into the 3x3,
Okay.
which was going to be a little bit of a challenge in and of itself, because pulp is difficult to break into that kind of segments. But we had already worked and started doing test pages, and I mean it was really going well until we had, like I said, we had a writer's room, and we would take our scripts into this room and we would give feedback. And one of our members, who's not one of our founding members, who was not here, gave some particularly harsh criticism towards the script that I felt very much unwarranted.
Wait a minute. Harsh criticism towards which script?
Towards Brian's script of Scarlet Trace.
Can you remember what the criticisms were?
I can. It was about the date. It was about
Yeah.
the date. The date that Brian had chose. Rob had a problem because, what about the pandemic they were going through? You know, it's like, is this before it or after it? You know, what would that change? And all, like just arbitrary details that to the greater part of the story didn't impact the story at all.
We're talking minutia points.
Yeah.
If
I remember.
Go ahead.
I remember there being a whole thing over a trash truck or trash pickup.
Exactly.
In one of the books.
Yeah.
And
there was trash cans
I remember thinking like, oh, okay, let me slowly. I did the Homer Simpson. I slowly backed out the room. Like that was such a small detail that.
So, as somebody who wasn't in any of the rooms, I have to ask, why was that Rob's fault or Rob's problem?
Well, here's the thing:
he wasn't editor in chief.
He assumed that role. Like he wanted, because we said that if you have a passion towards one area or the other, you can, we'll have the freedom and creativity to work in that, but it has to default to the last person. And as the editor in chief, I have to ask, why is somebody with the writing experience that Rob has suddenly picking apart somebody with the writing experience that Brian has? One word, 3 letters, ego.
The what?
1 word, 3 letters, ego.
Well, let's not name. I'm just asking what kind of authority or pull Rob would have in order to critique Brian's story. Because if Brian were to bring me a story, I wouldn't sit there and go, what's going on with the trash pickup? I'd go, have you researched this? How much research have you done on it? And great, let's go.
Done my research that was one of the record.
Yeah. And why would anybody doubt that you wouldn't?
That was one of the things or the beauty of, hey, take on other jobs that you feel passionate about. It gave people the ability to kind of get in a position where they could say, oh, I'm taking over this now, or I'll do this. And looking back, that was probably the wrong thing to do. Everybody should have had
our second big
clear
mistake.
Defined jobs.
The second big mistake?
Yeah, the first big mistake was allowing the breakdown in communication the way that we did.
The splintering.
Yeah, to allow that splintering to take place. And when it first happened, it just seemed innocent. It just seemed like it was just accidental. But to not call that right away, that was our first major mistake. How frequent were these splintering meetings going on? Daily.
Practically, yeah.
Daily, several times a day.
It was pretty down. Yeah.
And for me, I do my best to be a working person in the studio.
Yeah.
I can't spend my life in Messenger or Facebook.
No.
And so when I would pop into the meeting room, there'd be, a mile-long sheet of paragraphs that, am I supposed to go back through all this? Where is this written down that we need to do this? Why, I'm getting yelled at because this isn't done. Nobody told me that this needed to be done. I guess it was just assumed that I was going back through and reading stuff that I had no knowledge of that I needed to read.
Some hardcore communication breakdown.
Yeah, so that was the first issue. The second issue was allowing people to, I don't want to say
step out of their expertise.
I wanted people to be able to grow in those other areas,
sure,
and to have that freedom to do it. But it was the personality by which everyone else did a fine job. with that. They were able to step over and to stretch those muscles and kind of learn in that area by still defaulting back. But this was the first of many conversations. Not conversations is the wrong word. Arguments that took place over editorial issues and quality control. It started there, and it never stopped until we dissolved the corporation.
Okay.
Like, it was a constant struggle.
These problems just kept happening and happening.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. Now, Brian, I got to ask, did you tell Rob off?
Not really so much. I just kind of wrote it off as call it youthful enthusiasm. I mean, by that time, I did some copy editing on Austin's script by then, and was helping critique submissions, mostly because I wasn't really feeling I was, aside from mentioning what Terraform was doing, which, since it was also in the planning stages at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of concrete stuff I could deliver to an audience. So I just kept mentioning Terraform. But no, I didn't really take him down or anything, because I was used to, a little bit of bluster, a little bit of
give and take.
Yeah, a little bit of give and take. Yeah,
a little passion was never a problem. I mean,
no,
we're passionate people, we're creative people, and so you get passionate about it. And I would rather work with someone passionate about a project than someone who didn't care.
Okay.
And so we really, at the beginning stages, we looked at it as passion and not bullying, is what we looked at it as.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't mind being edited, because if I can defend my position and defend my research, because then I look awesome. Yeah. And plus, sometimes I do make mistakes. Right. And so if part of my research didn't measure up, then I got to go back and make it right.
So I had made a few suggestions to Brian about that particular script, and we talked about those, and there was some compromise met based on what I thought would be fun to draw or what would be visually stunning for the art. And so we had those conversations already, and the argument, it was just arbitrary, and it became so convoluted, but it became ugly. It got really ugly, and it was constantly ugly. And then there was more.
Wait. How did that happen? How did it get constantly ugly?
The splintering conversations, like, I'm getting messaged by Rob.
This wasn't just one conversation. This was all
these were multiple conversations
that kept going on.
Because I was, if any of us felt like it was fine, that point would be argued, and it was to the point to where it was like, constant barrage of, no, this isn't good enough, but we all felt that it was.
And who was bringing that up?
It was Rob.
And was there anybody else going around going, this isn't good enough?
I don't believe that anyone else brought that to my attention. Meredith and I had a couple of conversations about it. Our only concern was the title was very similar to another title that was already being published. And so we were concerned about that and what legal issues we may have with it. But as far as the content of the story, we thought it was great. I mean, there was a zombie ninja in it. It was amazing.
There we go.
It's a pulp book with a zombie ninja. It's exactly what I wanted to work on as an artist. I thought it was going to be amazing.
All right. Yeah. So there were other properties for 3x3. How were they going?
Well, Dreaded Dinosaur was one of them. Varian was supposed to be working on one, but he was getting sick. And but Meredith was working on one, and it was coming along swimmingly. Okay. I was working with Rob on Wolf and Fox. It was originally supposed to be a more teen version of Cat Dad and Supermom, but his editor / co-writer at the time, Chuck, didn't want that to happen. And so there was a compromise from a conversation that I'd had with him over in speakerphone, and my daughter had overheard, to say that, well, what if we just change that? Like, use the same concept, but change the characters and kind of change kind of the feel of that. And so he adapted, and he came up with this idea for Wolf and Fox. Okay. And so that was being developed, and it was pretty good. There was some input that was being made. Not a lot of pushback on some of the input that we were making, which was, surprising in that. but I was also working on a story called Runner that we were looking at hiring a writer for, and then Juror 13 is one that I was working on, and then Eighth Day was, so there was a number of
You
things
had
that we
properties that you were working on.
Yeah, we had put those into the writer's room, and people were taking on.
There
those
were a lot of
responsibilities to
stories
write
that we
those.
were putting into the writers' room for future development between the team.
So there was a lot of other things going
the
on.
other things, we're working on. But the most problematic thing that we ran into was the issue with the Scarlet Trace script, the 6 pages that we were going to be putting in there. And I remember I'm like, this is it was obvious, like, this is not going to end well. It was
because the discussions were getting more and more heated.
They were heated, and they were getting personal. It wasn't a matter of creativity. It was a matter of somebody obviously doesn't like somebody here, and it's becoming contentious. It's not
okay.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those things. And so I had to go from editor-in-chief mode to HR mode and try to have to deal with that. And so I knew I had Rob on one side, I had Brian on the other, and it's like, one of these people are going to leave.
You had that feeling?
Be able to work together. Yeah, I had that feeling. I had that conversation with Brian. I said I had a feeling that one of the two of you was going to leave. Fortunately, Brian and I have the relationship that we have to where we knew we were going to keep working together, and that Scarlet Trace was eventually going to come out, and we're eventually going to make that happen. We've yet to nail that down. But I felt, given the way things were, I was exhausted from working full time, from trying to do my own IP, from trying to create these other IPs, and then trying to manage this chaos that had been happening for the last several days. That I was just in a place where I was willing to take anybody's resignation, just to make it stop.
Okay.
It just needed to stop, and you could feel the tension in the group. You can feel like Varian and Eric kind of like that stepping back, like this is like. This is it was way more critique and way more heat about the critique than what should have or what was justifiable. It was quite intense.
And the animosity had risen to a pitch.
And so that was when Brian.
And that led to Brian's resignation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize at all. We're here to lay everything out on the table.
I'm a troublemaker.
Brian, really, why did you leave?
Well, we had, to be honest with you, I had known Rob long enough that a lot of this stuff just kind of rolled off my back. That I'm, we all have that one friend like, oh, it's fill in the blank. And that becomes the excuse for some poor behavior. But there was reaching a time, and I think it was primarily Luke and Meredith and Rob and I were working on a standard contract for all people whose properties would be accepted for publication by Terraform. And we had worked on this for better part of well over a week, I think. And we were meeting like every other day.
I think it was like 17 days. When I look back at my records, I think I counted 17 days of conversation about it, because we knew that in order to build capital, we needed to have some things that were ready to release.
Right.
And so we had discussed in a couple of meetings, our primary focus still being on our 3x3, but taking on a couple of these things that were already ready, like one-offs or short mini series that we could easily publish, market, and get sold, and be able to take our 20% to be able to build capital for the things that we wanted to do, because we knew we needed capital, we needed distribution, which we can't distribute anything until we have a product. So we needed to have a product, and we needed audience, which we were building audience because Brian was doing his part, Meredith was doing her part, and our audience was growing very rapidly, and there was a lot of people watching, and so we knew that we needed to try to develop some other things, and so that's why the contract came into play.
Right. And just entry, that was one of the reasons I worked on Scarlet Trace as I did, because I was seeing that other projects were not reaching the finish line as quickly, and I knew that at least I could get my part done. So that's why I did it. But yeah, it was the contract. Oops, excuse me, pardon me. Fez tried to leave. But no, it was the
he's on the clock.
Was the the contract thing where things broke down for me.
Does the Fez need a cigarette break?
No, it's a trooper. It will carry on. Brian is an
Okay.
awkward goof, however, so carry on.
And I do recall one of the conversations that we had about the contract was the use of fan art. You know, and what we as a company could do versus what was legally available to us with being a creator-owned company and those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so that conversation, which should have been a fairly easy and cut and dry situation, was kind of on the heels of the kind of the more aggressive criticism of Scarlet Trace's script. And so I believe that animosity fueled the animosity in that conversation. And it was just ugly. It was just ugly.
Yeah, it was. And I was trying not to make it so, to be honest. But
well, there was definitely an antagonist in that situation.
Well, yeah. I was trying not to be that one, though. Yeah. But no, and I remember we had that meeting and some things were said that made me kind of plant that seed out that, because I didn't know everyone that well.
Okay.
And all of a sudden the seed of doubt is, well, there is this great possibility that your rights could be screwed over by someone within your team, and we're not creating a mechanism for it.
Is that something that you come up on your own?
I've seen it before in publishing, and I have run into it in the course of my career too.
Okay.
And so I wrote.
We just lost C. Michael. Nita's C. Michael. All right. All right. Go ahead.
Well, anyway, I at this point, in fact, right after the meeting is over, I started, thinking about it, and like I said, I didn't know everyone as well as I do now. And so I DM'd Rob, Luke, and Meredith outlining my criticisms. Luke and Meredith were trying to understand where I was coming from, because I come primarily from the book publishing world, where the initial talk of the contract, just as an aside, was like a 2 or 3 page document. I have seen publishing documents in books that are 20 pages or more.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you're covering worldwide rights and first publication, et cetera, et cetera. Well, anyway, I emailed, like I said, everyone involved in the conversation. I didn't email Eric or Varian because they were not a part of it. And that was the only reason why. But I wanted clarification for the part that we had discussed. And Meredith and Luke were actually trying to figure out where I was coming from. The other comment I got was, well, do what you got to do. And so that night I left.
Who sent you the do what you got to do?
Not Luke or Meredith.
Okay.
Now, I want to say that around that time, about 3 weeks later, Brian is still chummy with everybody. Like, at least I say everyone at IndieVolt. He still pops in, says hello. And I remember being told, hey, don't talk to Brian. And this is weird. And Randy might remember this because it hurt me. Brian is going around telling everyone that we are stealing his viewers. We're encroaching on his time slot.
Yes, I do remember.
You remember that?
100%.
Yeah,
yes, I do. Where did you get that information from, though?
Well, it wasn't.
If it's the truth, it's not. If it's the truth, it's not going to hurt.
Well, Robert come in and told me. He says, we need to stop talking to Brian because he's telling people this and that, and he hates Terraform, so he's going to tear us all apart. Don't talk to him, don't engage with him. He says, and I'm like, oh, well, and I mean, you remember, Randy, it hurt me because I considered, like Brian a friend. I'm like, what? We're not encroaching on his time. If there's a problem, I thought Brian would have come in. Well, we just got the same company. I thought he would have come to me and said, hey, man, what's going on? What do you mean we're stealing his viewers?
Or I'd have done a better job of it.
It's like I'm like, I'm like, I can understand that we still as viewers, we got a superior program, but so
Oh,
I'm joking.
No,
I'm joking. But no, I think that was a part of the thing of don't talk. He was out, and now he's done. I see Meredith's fingers up.
yes.
Yeah,
Meredith.
I just wanted to say, now this is later on in the timeline, okay? But at
Let's
the
not-
time, like after
Make
Brian
sure-
had left,
Make sure it's relevant.
he
we keep
was
linear here.
on Nevermind the Furthermore, and he was
Mhm.
talking about this separation from this publishing company.
Mhm.
And so that, because I was working so hard and I was being kept so busy that it felt personal to me.
Yeah.
But
Well, when you
most of
talk
these
about your
guys,
yeah,
most of
go
these
ahead.
guys have gotten a scathing letter from me. Again, later on in the timeline. But I just wanted to say that was the very beginning of it, where it was the seed of doubt. With Brian, with everybody else, again, because that breakdown of communication, we were in so many rooms, so many chats, so many private meetings after
Yep.
hours.
Yep.
So busy. It's like, you can be on a hamster wheel and you can run as fast as you can, but you're not getting anywhere.
It kept us
And that's
exhausted.
really what it was like,
On top of everything else that you were doing, Brian.
on
go
top
ahead.
of everything else.
Yeah.
Right. And I want to say for the record that if any, I'm old school, and you don't say nasty things about your former boss.
Sure. Yeah.
And I did talk to Meredith. I did, maintain my, my contact with Meredith and Luke. But for the most part, I didn't talk about it at all. And people would ask me, and I would say, that's not my place to tell you.
Mhm.
I don't want to air dirty laundry.
Mhm.
And if anything, I was trying to be still supportive of the remaining group as best I could. But the only thing I did was I left and I took Scarlet Trace with me. Again, as Luke said, the understanding he and I would be working on it sometime in the future, and
Sure.
we still will.
Yeah. And at that time, it was it was so charged and splintered and everything that I wasn't, I own that, I was a class A
You were
bitch
busy.
in a way,
Yeah.
but again, exhausted, working hard. And then it's just like, I see this company that I've invested time into
Mhm.
falling apart. And I'm like, how do I fix this? I mean, that's just in my personality. It's like, what can I take on to fix this?
Right.
And I didn't really see that I was on an island. I was on an island unto myself, because at that point, the communication was broken down to a point where I entrusted somebody.
By this
to
point,
be a
everybody
filter for me.
started concentrating on their own stuff, except
Yes.
for you who were concentrating on the company.
I was still
that
like,
was your
I
stuff.
can save it.
Yeah.
Meredith was still working on the company. I was still working on the company, but at that time I started running a campaign. So kind of moving forward a little bit from Brian's leaving,
Mhm.
I was working on the trade paperback, because the trade paperback was going to wind up being
Hybrids.
whatever I made from my hybrids trade paperback. The extra was going to go back into the company, So
Okay.
it was like, it was important because I'd already spent money on legal fees for incorporation.
Mhm.
There was, a lot of different things that, paying for things and doing stuff like that. That wound up taking a lot of resources that I needed to recover.
Right.
And then there was other things that we wanted to do that needed more money put into it, And so I started focusing on that a bit so that we could have a fairly successful campaign. We wound up running 60 days. We wound up running it on Indiegogo, because I had just wrapped up with Voodoo Nations on Kickstarter. I had just made an announcement with my alignment with a particular community that would freak some people out. So there was kind of some of those moves, but I understood as a publisher, well, now's the time to make those kind of announcements, not when we're, 2 or 3 years into this,
Right.
And those kind of things. And so we made all of those, kind of getting through those issues. there were still little fires. And about that time, I actually
Wait. There were still little fires.
there were little fires, and that's what I'm getting ready to talk about.
All right.
What I noticed is there was a thing, some triangulation taking place. And I noticed that whenever we would come into a meeting, Meredith and Rob seemed to be on the same page about things that we weren't.
Mhm.
And then I would get a phone call from Rob saying, oh, well, I talked to Varian about this, and Varian thinks this way, and Meredith thinks this way. And so I'm getting this report that everyone else is kind of thinking a certain way, or maybe not a certain way when it comes to some of the decisions that we were going to make.
Mhm.
And I started to realize that there was triangulation taking place, and that meetings were being called that Eric and Varian couldn't make it to. And that I was like, look, and so I brought Meredith and Rob into a room, and I said, look, I see what's happening, and it's not going to continue to happen. You know, I was very serious about that. And so after I had that conversation, that was around December that conversation took place.
December 2020.
2020. Yeah.
Okay.
And I began to look very closely at the fact that there were these little pre-meeting campaigns that were going on, and that there were more fires. And I started looking at like, okay, well, where are the issues that we're having trouble, where we're not cohesive, where like we were in the beginning? And I started looking for who was holding the matches. And again, it was Rob that was holding those matches.
Oh, now fires, you're talking about production problems, little picky points, minutia.
Yeah.
What are we talking about here?
Yeah, we're talking about those little busy things that keep us off target or off track.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, we're supposed to be working on our own IPs. We're supposed to be working on building something for the company.
Yes.
And then we'd get pulled off on this, or we get pulled off on that, you know.
I remember, not to interrupt you, Luke, but I remember one meeting that came out of nowhere, which was getting this meeting. It was come to the meeting now. And we log in, and I remember you were there, Meredith, Brian was out.
By
but
that point, yeah.
Eric wasn't there. But it was, the meeting was called because Rob said someone had spread a rumor that he was being controlled within Terraform, and he wanted to know that I tell anybody that, and because he had been approached on Twitter.
Yeah, I remember.
And I remember I said, no one gives a damn that I'm in Terraform. No one talks to me about anything. No one cares. It's, it was a Jurassic Park moment. Dotson, we got Dotson here. No one cares. So I'm like, I don't. And it was coming here, and we're going to talk about why. Like, there's rumors going around that I'm being controlled. I'm like, I haven't talked to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we being called to this emergency meeting for this? And it started this thing with me where later on and in future meetings, when this would come up with this, someone told me, I started saying, no. Who? I want names. And I think Meredith, I remember that. And yeah, I want names. I want screenshots because, and I remember saying this, and this is where I believe that I became a target and had to be taken out. I said, I want names. Yep, I want screenshots, and if I don't get those, and you say, "Well, it was in a private chat." Oh, so you're in private chats with people that aren't being recorded, or did you? So I don't believe it. So show me names, show me the receipts, and I think when I started asking for receipts, I kind of signed my warrant to be kicked out of there.
That brings me back to those fires, particularly those fires where we need Varian or we need Eric out of the company.
But that was what he was doing. He's like, he would come in and saying, I heard this. Somebody came to me, my fans, my people.
His people.
There was never
His
really
people.
anyone particularly brought up.
All of these things that he was coming at us with, it's just like,
They were phantoms.
Who?
Now, Varian at this point, we're still running Indie Volt, right?
Yeah.
Where does our involvement with Geek Insider and?
Well, what happened was So everything's going. Everyone's on like, well, we're all still running along as this like group. And
Right.
I had noticed because the pandemic, they were tearing my credit card up for my debit card actually up for the radio.
No,
Because the
no,
more band-
don't jump ahead. At this point,
Okay.
you invited Rob on to Indie Volt. And
Oh
we
yeah,
started,
yeah, yeah.
we
was a
started
constant
having him on as kind of a co-host.
Yeah,
on,
he was
and
a constant contributor.
he started,
and-
and contributing, and he started out as a contributor. He was bringing us guests. He was being helpful.
Yeah. Let me
he
say
was
this.
doing good work.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I want to say. Not only was he a contributor, he was an amazing contributor.
Yeah,
He was bringing in people that we had not met. He was bringing in new people. It was so many people actually. It was fast. I mean, we couldn't book them fast enough. I mean, people. We had a. There was one point where he had given me probably like a month and a half long list of people who wanted to come on the show. So it was, again, it was we were spoiled for choice when it came to guests. Some things started happening. Some people would, message me and say, "Hey, who runs that? Who runs that thing? Who runs Indie Volt?" Is it yours? Is it? It's mine. But you guys all know it. I really don't take any like big time ownership of it. I'm not that person.
Sometimes to your detriment.
Yeah.
Because I've had a lot of people contact me asking to be booked on the show, and I'm like, you need to talk to Varian or Lola about that. That's what they do. Yeah,
and I don't so much mind, but it's
right.
That was one thing. Now, one of the things that happened, and this doesn't have anything to do with Terraform, but one of the things that happened was that it had started to be a thing where I was getting in trouble. I will never forget a person, and they're not involved, so I won't say their name, but
you don't have to name
got mad. Yeah, they got mad. They said, "Hey, I'm being asked if I'm a part of this particular comic book movement, and it's not fair. And you need to get this person off of your network." And they wanted me to get Rob off the network. And I was like, at this point, I'm stuck on the sofa. I can't move. I'm sick. My legs are falling off. And
well, you've had an illness that sometimes just debilitates you and keeps you from moving off of the couch. It's
right.
It's so amazing that you've been in front of the camera and the microphone as much as you have.
Yeah, it comes and goes, but I don't. Yeah. It's infrequent, and you don't know when it's going to happen. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm not getting rid of him. He's he's a friend.
He's been helpful,
and he's been helpful. I'm not. What are you talking about? And then the thing is, a sign was held up, and it said Comics Gate Ally, and it was my fault. It was my fault. It was because according to a lot of people, you have to own it.
It's out of the blue.
Your show, so you have to.
That wasn't something that you had approved.
No, it wasn't something.
Somebody scribbled on a piece of paper and stuck it up in front of the camera.
Yeah, and it was done as a joke. He did it in jest. He didn't mean anything malicious by it. I still believe he didn't mean anything malicious by it. But apparently, people who viewed it, they thought it was. They thought it was.
His nature and persona is antagonistic in nature, and that's all he was doing. Antagonistic, I think.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That he's always labeled himself the indie devil, but let's not try to make this personal.
Well, but the thing is, like, I didn't so much. Like, I was like, okay, well, I did a little bit of a meeting, a little.
I remember the tempers were flaring because Indie Volt has always made it a point to stay neutral.
Right. And
always.
I was like, okay. I'm not going to, like, I made a town hall and I discussed it. Like, why are people coming at me over something that, obviously, like, we have people from any walk of life when it comes to comics on. We don't care. We're here we're Team Good Comics. Let's have people on who have good books. And that's all that matters. And, we got past that little drama storm, but what eventually happened was, and Meredith can finish this off because this is how some of the division happened around the same time, was the radio cost. there's a certain bandwidth usage that you go over, you have to pay more. So there was a problem.
That's calculated by hours used by the month and the amount of viewership, right?
Right. There was a problem where I was like, hey, we have to stop having shows so frequently because it's killing the bandwidth.
And again, I think you're at this point, you did a little jump here because Rob had decided to start putting up shows all the time.
Yeah. So I was gonna get to that. Like, yeah, he had a daily show basically where he would talk about the news, and I remember having a discussion. I said, I don't think there's enough stuff happening in indie comics where you can talk about it every day. Otherwise, it's gonna be very short news day.
And did you not, in fact, ask him to stop?
Yeah, I remember saying, hey, don't do it. Just try to streamline the shows. Let's make each of these shows seem different. Now you can do it on your own channel, but on IndieVolt, this is back off a bit. Now, what happened was the bandwidth started going up. So I'm like, hey, listen, we're not going to broadcast on the radio for a minute until I can figure out if they're jacking me around on my numbers, and let this bandwidth, let the amount of usage we're using fall. That was across the board. That was IndieVault. That was his network. That was Geek Insider. That was anybody who was broadcasting anywhere. We're not a mirror radio for like a week. Meredith, go ahead.
Meredith is shaking her head for our radio audience.
Yeah. I was letting her go. I stopped.
Well,
so she gets
I just wanted to say, at the time, this is months previously, where we were kind of doing like this whole network of IndieVolt, Geek Insider, Comic Book Advocates Network, and we were like, hey, if we put our heads together, we have this selection of programming that is going to reach a broader audience, right? And at this time, again, I didn't know what was going on with Rob. I knew he was doing his daily shows. That's what he does. But then I didn't know the communication that he was having with Varian. I got a message. I don't remember exactly when it was. And he says, we got a cease and desist from Varian. Cease and desist. No more streaming. And don't do any more until we hear back. And then we never heard back. But I never, again, my responsibility is that I never went to Varian and asked about it. I was okay from hearing it from somebody that I trusted.
Varian said that they had to stop streaming.
Right.
But he didn't send any type of legal notice.
Right.
Yeah, no.
He didn't say stop forever.
Yeah, I said stop for 1 week.
Yeah. I got a cease and desist.
That's what Rob said.
Yes.
To you.
At this time, Rob started making Varian a bad guy in our conversations. And it was a lot of, what Varian said or whatever, until it finally came to a conversation that I wound up having with Varian. Like, hey, this is how I feel as the guy who kind of had this idea and birthed it and has put a lot of money into it. Terraform means a lot to me, and you have a percentage of my company. And I don't hear you or feel like you are carrying the banner as much. I don't feel like you're carrying 16% of the banner. Because that's how much of the company you own, and we had a heart to heart, and I was real honest with him about it. And that got cleared up. And that is when I think that the doubling down on the triangulation and the splintered conversations took place, because when Varian and I were able to compare receipts and say, look, this is my problem. Varian was no longer vilified. It was, we see eye to eye, which is how we communicated at the beginning. And so if you're going to be in a collaboration with somebody, I suggest you have upfront communication all the time. But that was kind of the turn of those things a little bit. Then what we started to do was, near around the same time, I started keeping an eye on the triangulation and what was taking place. And it was probably 2 months later that the conversations really started to change, because what I did is, during that time, I said, okay, I noticed I had some conversations with Rob. He was very upset because he was no longer working with the Advocator that they were doing, that had disbanded. He saw that Travis, who took a version of the Advocator was his idea, and he went and he took some kind of form of that
was
to work with
his former partner, Travis Gill.
Yeah, for the Advocator. And then he took a version of that to a small comic shop in Orlando here in Florida.
Okay.
To do that. And so he was kind of upset about that, you know, and a little sore about it. And he saw that Randy was doing the Indie Volt Revolt. And, you know, had he was kind of upset about that. And so knowing that things had gotten put off, Varian wasn't able to produce because he was ill for a while and had to deal with all the fires that were created with Indie Volt that he had to deal with there. Eric, I think had been for the most part run off because he was like, every time he walked in, it was just a hellstorm of drama. And so I was like, man, if we could get Eric in for one meeting where we're not dealing with this baloney, and the meetings would go on forever. It was like, we weren't just dealing with things. It was like, we were having pre-meetings, we were having the meeting, then we had the post meeting, and it was hours and hours, and it was exhausting. And there was always something new or some new initiative that we were trying to do, and everything just kept getting turned around.
Eric.
And so, yeah.
I remember this moment where I was in the chat room with, or I was in the streaming room with you and Rob and I think everybody else, and it was just pressuring me to make a decision if I'm part of Terraform or not. And I kept coming back with you guys. I was like, look, I'm busy. I'm a professional. I'm doing all these shows. If you want me to do something, you gotta tell me what we need to be done. I was like, okay, well, we've got Fox and Wolfie to be colored. What would you want for that? I was like, oh, you know what? We'll figure out a price later. I can do it for bottom dollar or whatever. Just give me the pages and I'll get it done. And I got it done. And it was like, $25 a page, that's fine. And I figured, we'd had the conversation much, much earlier that these, the costs of creating the thing would be part of what the crowdfund would be. And I know shortly after that, Rob made a post about something to the effect of getting free work or something. You shouldn't have to pay for something. It seemed like you took a roll back pedal to what was essentially, that was like bottom dollar, just to try to get something done. And I put good work into it.
You did.
And it kind of spiraled out of that control because I really wanted to make it like we've been having all of this trauma. We have all this different meetings and all these arguments and stuff. We still didn't have a product. We didn't have a cohesive comic. We were trying to put one together, but the focus kept changing. I remember coming into a room at one point and it was like, they're talking about having a youth version and an adult X-rated version of the company. Like, why are we designing other companies but we don't have a product for this one? But nobody at that time, nobody seemed to want to hear that. Mm-hmm. And so I have been down this road before. We're trying to start companies. Again, the same thing happened in those. Ego took over. Whole thing fell apart. I got a responsibility to my family. I got my own product I'm developing. I got my own paid work to do. So I didn't start, it didn't become a priority for me to become in meetings. And then I started to see where I was being referred to like a supervillain hiding in the shadows. And it just got so cartoonish. It got so cartoonish. It's like, how are we gonna, this is totally failed. We're not taking this as a serious company when there's, just people are being treated like supervillains within inside of it.
That was definitely a problem. And then I also started getting some reports from people that, Rob says that from people sending me messages on Facebook.
Outside people.
Outside people.
Okay.
Not our people, but outside people.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Rob says, and I can show those receipts, but that's not what this forum is for.
Yeah.
But legitimate people said, hey, Rob is saying that the vision of Terraform Comics is his and that he's the one that's in charge. And there is video proof of him saying those things. Mm-hmm. And it really upset me. Sure. Because this was kind of towards the tail end of what we wound up calling the continuum, because we're like, okay, well, we need to fill these books. We need to have a product. And so he wanted to try to go back and do a little bit of what the Advocator had done and bring in some new talent, which is where we got Michael Lanning coming in to work on a project with Meredith. And some of those things worked really well. He created another group and yet another chat. And so it was one more way of splintering your attention off into another area. But I kind of felt like, if we allow this to happen, it will appease kind of his creative need to do this. But I can still kind of control the quality control. We still have Eric that, is the art director. Nothing gets past those things until one day I see a cover come out that Eric had not approved. I had not approved. No one had approved. And it was
god awful.
Thank you. It was not good. And it was a problem.
Before that, let me explain Indie Volt Revolt, because we were doing this radio network and we were talking to a lot of people. And there was a lot of people that were coming on the show as guests that were phenomenally talented. And a lot of our listeners are on the radio, and they don't look at us. They don't know what we're capable of doing. So I had come up with the idea of putting together an anthology book using the people that have been coming on the show, because the variety of what we did was so phenomenal that we should put a short story collection together. I had no idea about 3x3. I had no idea that anything was going on with Advocator or anything like that. I just wanted to do a short story collection that would be pretty cool to do. I was working on my own stuff. I wasn't part of Terraform at all.
Yeah, nobody talked. I would talk occasionally to Randy about advice for running the company because there were issues and things I was dealing with, but I didn't go into detail because it wasn't his business.
No, it wasn't.
But about that time, not only was Eric being vilified, but Varian was being vilified even further by saying that, well, he's taken every idea we have and he's going and he's telling Randy Zimmerman about it.
Well, suddenly I was turning into the bad guy.
You were, and to be entirely fair, here's the problem. Many of the things that we were doing looked like things that you were doing, but there was a reason for that.
Yeah.
And
because Rob was finding out what I was doing and bringing those over to Continuum.
And I want to say one thing too, because I thought we mentioned it earlier, and I was like, I better clear that up. When Randy said that he had seen the Terraform logo, he's seen the Terraform logos after the company had dissolved. I showed him what Eric had done.
Yeah.
Because it was like I didn't show him while the company was being built. I showed him afterwards. Like, look at all the logos that Eric did. So just so we know, I wasn't showing information to him at the time. In fact, sometimes I would come to those meetings after a meeting. We started Indie Volt. And I'd be like, my head's flat. And Randy would say, "What's wrong?" And I'd say, "I just came out of Terraform meeting." He was like, "Oh, you sure you want to be there, man? you sure you want to be there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sticking there," because I was there for, Luke had asked me to be there. And I was hopeful that we could, grow this company. I want to bring attention to Meredith says she may have to leave.
Meredith, do you need to go? I know we've been here a long time. For our radio audience, this is a special edition of Special Issues. We're unearthing Terraform. We're talking about the rise and fall of Terraform Comics. So we're a little bit more serious than we would be normal.
I'm good until about 10 after.
Okay.
All right. So
okay. We got time then.
So yeah, I just want to say that, again, there was no sharing of information, and here's where everyone should know what happens next. I think this is the important part of why a lot of those ideas that were.
Well, see, Indie Volt Revolt was going full tilt, and I had already started a creators group on Facebook, and I had people that were getting ready to contribute stories. Suddenly, Rob comes in and starts going, "Hey, you got your short story for a book? We're doing a book. Got a short story? Give me a short story." So I didn't know any of this was going on until I get contacted by a frequent guest contributor to the show going, "Hey, I'm about to sign to show my short story in your book." And I said, "We haven't talked about this at all." Well, come to find out, it was going to Rob's book.
Now, let me say, I didn't know any of this was happening. And I don't think Meredith knew any of this was happening. This was all private conversations like, "Hey, I'm working on this big thing. I might be able to get someone in."
Yeah.
And it turns out that he was sniping talent. And the reason why.
He was literally taking the talent out of the Facebook group, my creators group. and contacting them and asking them to do stories for his book. And everybody thought they were doing stories for Revolt.
Mm-hmm.
And
Just
instead
let that
of
sink in for a second.
and then when it was, instead of accept responsibility that this was being done, said, I'm going to blame this on Varian and say that they're still in. And it's like, I don't do anything. I'm lazy. I don't have time to share information.
Don't do anything.
Yeah.
You're running an empire. You don't have time to sit and chat with me. But I've been trying to get work done too. Plus, I've got a commercial art business that I've been doing as much as possible on the side, which I've pared down now thanks to Arrow Comics. But anyway, it's another story. But so anyway, what happens out of the blue? Suddenly, Russ Leach is involved with Continuum.
Yeah,
I asked Russ what Russ tells me. Yeah, I'm part of your book. I said, what are you talking about? And this was the second time that I had heard this. This is when I realized what Rob was doing. I said, Russ, no, that's not the book we're doing for Indie Volt. That's a book that Rob's associated with over at Terraform. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. So around that time,
on the plus side, just so I can finish off Russ's story here, Russ felt so bad that he was associating himself, had gotten the books confused, that he ended up doing a story in advance, an original story that was in Revolt. And I had already paid Russ to do a cover for Revolt, thinking that he wasn't going to have time to do anything, because I know Russ's schedule is really tight and he's very busy. And at the time, he was doing outside work, as he's still doing outside work as well. But that's when I told Russ that, hey, look, I'm going to do Arrow Comics again. Please don't sign with anybody else. Let me take your property and give you the sweetheart deal you deserve, and knock it down into regular books in order to sell to retailers. So that agreement came to, pretty quick. But that was because Rob had already sniped him over to Continuum.
Yeah, and so we were getting ready to start running a Kickstarter for this thing, and Rob had said, "Okay, well, we need to get the Kickstarter done, but when it's over on March 20th, I want to have a meeting so that we can kick out Eric." That didn't settle well with me.
Why did he want to kick Eric out? Because of the Kickstarter.
He couldn't triangulate with Eric, I think, is the reason why.
He couldn't get Eric to
Eric wasn't taking his bull crap. He wasn't smelling the BS.
Yeah.
And so I was uncomfortable with it. I wasn't going to go along with it. Mm-hmm. But about that time, Rob, starts saying, "Hey, we always said that we were going to have 7 people instead of just the 5." And to be honest with you, I could never recall that conversation. But I think I'll be honest with you, I was gaslit. It was repeated so many. Yeah, remember when you said this and that, and that.
You don't remember having that conversation?
I don't remember that conversation. I don't remember the conversation. I was like, well, maybe we did. Okay, I know I was busy. He's like, yeah, you're really busy with church and and this and all that kind of stuff. And and so it was like that. Now at this time, I still kind of thought Rob was my friend. We were buddies. We hung out. We'd meet up sometimes. I honestly thought we were friends. I didn't realize how much I was being played in this situation until retrospect. But we had not agreed that we were going to add more people, but we did in this moment. We agreed, let's add a couple of new people in. One of those people at this point, I was still mad at Varian. So this was right before my conversation with him to say, hey, let's, and where we would see eye to eye. But we knew it would be nice to have additional people bring in some creative input. And so, let's add a couple of people. And so we invited C. Michael Lanning and Mike Seeley to join the group for a probationary period for 90 days to see how they work with the group. They weren't allowed to speak into any of the business of the company, but they could speak into the creative process of some of the works that we were doing.
Yeah, I was never told that. I was never told that.
What were you told, C. Michael?
what I was told was I was coming in as a promotional manager of sorts, as it was. But and mind you, at this point in time, though, that's what I was wondering. When did the group start? Because I've had dealings with Terraform before I became a partner. Reapers was picked up long before I became a partner, and I was even told, and Meredith can testify to this, that it was picked up to be a run book. Was that not agreed upon in Terraform?
Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was told. Rob sat there in the room with both Meredith
Luke?
and I
No.
that book was going to be a main run. It was picked up to be a main run for Terraform.
No.
It was going to be a full-fledged book.
Yeah,
That-
it was
that's
going to
what
be
you
a
were told.
full-fledged book. That's what I was told.
No,
Okay.
that conversation was never had with myself, Eric, Varian. Did you ever hear that have that conversation?
It's
No,
amazing.
no.
That's amazing.
Meredith,
Okay.
Meredith, you're the writer on this. Was that your
I
understanding?
honestly don't remember that conversation.
Yeah.
To have that to have the series. I mean, that was one of the things where in Terraform it was one of those things where I believe it was a moment of opportunity, because we had been talking about the stories. And so I think that might have been rolled in.
What, the fact that you might be a full-fledged book later?
Yes.
Well, to answer the question, you didn't know when Terraform started. 6/25 of 2020 was the official date that we filed and got our incorporation.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Reapers didn't happen until months later.
That's absolutely right. However, we were part of the group. You and I were together on the group. That group happened in October of 2020.
Yes.
During that point in time, I was rushed to get that book, to get those pages done. We were rushed to the end of December, and he had told us that it was picked up to be the first run of a first run book.
Well, that must have
That's
been
what
the
I
group
meant.
that he called Terraformed Comics. That later became the Continuum group, where he was trying to develop talents to be put into the Continuum.
So he was already spun off on his own as his own boss on this at this point,
That's what I'm saying. It's
Right.
like-
behind the
coming-
scenes of the group.
Before I even knew he was.
Okay.
Yeah, that
I
was told
figured it
us,
out in December.
StreamYard.
But that's what I mean. There were so many groups.
Yeah.
So
There's so
many
much
groups that it was
splintering.
just like, okay, where is this conversation taking place?
Mm-hmm.
And I was part of a string, and I'm gonna put this all out here, okay? So you're gonna have to forgive me and how this is gonna go. But I was put in the middle of a street. We had I think might have been a backer pause. At the end of that backer pause, somebody made the statement that they wanted Barry and Eric out of that backer. This is before I was part of Terraform.
Somebody. Now wait a minute. Who else is in this conversation with you?
This was Luke right before he talked to Varian. Right before the conversation.
This was before Luke talked to Varian.
Right before Luke and Varian cleared the air.
At this point,
Yeah.
in time.
You were
This is
in
right
you were
before
in
that.
a separate group at this point, right?
No, this was after a backer pause that we were
Okay.
we were all part of. So
All right.
so at that point in time, I was approached to be a partner of Terraform. I honestly did not want to be a partner in Terraform because already the hostility of that company was already leaking out. I mean, after all, I was behind the scenes. I was not even considered at that point in time to be a partner, and I could already see. Well, when I was called to be a partner, I asked about that, and I was told that was handled.
Luke called you to be a partner?
No.
No.
Rob called me, and I'm not talking about
Rob wasn't
messenger,
editor in
like
chief of Terraform at that point. Rob
No,
didn't
and
have the authority.
I talked
did
to
he?
Mike Seeley to be a partner. And I do recall after that, it's like, we're looking, and this is when we had sufficiently been gaslit to believe that we had agreed that we were supposed to add 2 more people to the group. And Varian and Eric were solidly vilified to at least Meredith and I. And then the conversations, and then so in the moment you like, oh, I'm so frustrated because it was we had just had a conversation before backer pause, went into backer pause, and then you guys stayed afterwards, and I'm peaked frustration. After we got out of that stream, that's when I was like, I need to talk to Varian. I need to talk to Eric. And so that's when we started. I'm like, I know better. I don't take word for it. Let's figure out what's going on and get to the bottom of this.
Meredith?
And, to kind of piggyback on that, looking back, again, this is what we're doing. We're kind of looking back on the experience, is that these were more opportunities for triangulation, more opportunities to separate, to move the board, move the pieces around the board for what? For one person to have all the keys.
Yeah. I actually have here, when I was added to the group, I do have the message here of what my title was and what it was here. And it's actually going to confirm some of the stuff that they have actually said.
What's the date?
Okay, this date is on February 11th, 2021.
Okay.
February.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so Mike Seeley, this is from Rob now. I would like to make that. Okay, so Mike Seeley will be announced tomorrow as head of marketing for Terraform, and C. Michael Lanning will be named head of promotional materials. We need a headshot from you, Seeley, and we share blah blah blah, talking about my being on live shows. Now, of course, these titles do not mean you are limited to your titles. We all work together to cultivate the nest of products for fans and readers. We rise together and will make each other stronger with creative support. And like I said, I asked that question. I said, what am I supposed to do as quote unquote promotional materials? Because when I was asked to be a partner, this title was not presented to me. This is the first time that I ever received this title. And I asked, what does that mean? Oh, well, you're already doing it. You're sharing stuff. So you're already doing it.
No, the conversation was that you would come on to help because Eric was now handling colors for us and other stuff. But we also needed stuff done for the website and we needed stuff done for social media. And so the idea was that you would help with creating promotional material for those ideas, for those avenues. And Seeley actually had a marketing background. And so his main role was to go around to comic shops and try to get us set up in the comic shops.
So he was your retailer liaison.
Yeah. Marketing.
Yeah.
Fun title. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of pushed out to where this is what you were going to do. And it was never really given a job what that actually meant, promotional materials. Because to me, promotional materials would be putting together advertisements, putting together, like you said, like websites and things of that nature. And at this point in time, I've already agreed to work with Arrow when I was approached by this. But that was the conversation I had.
Let's pull back on that just a little bit, because when you applied to Arrow, I put out an open call looking for unique cartoonists.
That's correct.
In order to work on product. When you applied to Arrow, I had no idea really that you were connected with Rob until after I had seen your stuff. Right. And as we were setting up our initial interview and talk, I'm like, I told you at the time, look, I don't want to have anything at all to do with Rob. And by this point, Rob had severed from IndieVolt, had long been gone. And there had even been a time that I ended up sharing a meme that Rob had posted that Rob got super hostile about and went through and called me a crab and all sorts of. I stopped all communication with Rob. I was done after the mess with Revolt, after the mess with this other person that told me that had gotten his wires mixed up, after this problem with Russ. I was done. And I was with Rob. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. I haven't talked to him since.
And let me put this in here too. And when you talked, you did not try to persuade me against Rob.
No.
You did not say anything in the sense of, you didn't even go into all of that with Rob.
I told you at the time I wasn't going to go into it with you.
Absolutely.
It's drama, and we need to work.
This was not persuaded by you.
Yeah.
And I didn't join Terraform until February 11th, which is almost a month after you and I talked. But I had been a co-anchor on what was finally dubbed Weekended because there was such a,
And I knew you were there, but I told you, I said, look, I don't want you to tell anybody. I don't want you especially to tell Rob, because I was familiar already with Rob stealing my anything that I wanted to do as far as Revolt went.
Right. See, did you even make it to the 21st?
Oh, no.
No, I remember your resignation.
See, made it to the 16th as far. Oh, okay.
No, honestly, after you had turned in your first initial set of art with me, and everything was good to go on that, I think you tendered a resignation the next day.
To be honest with you, I'm not trying to start a company. I'm not
No.
trying to be part of a company. That's not what I want to do. I want to
Right.
make comic books. That's it.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to say pressured, but pressured to join this company because of somebody close to me who believed in that company. And what was going to happen was I was going to come on to this company, but I was going to quickly step back and let my wife take a hold of things. Because what I was told in that meeting was that, oh, if I'm a part of it, so was my wife.
And what
By
expertise,
default.
Anita, did you bring to the table?
Me, faith and believing in the company. I loved the idea. I've been a fan of comics forever. The approach was not, it was never, when I was mentioned to be a 3x3, it was basically what the advocator is, except there would be work from creators within the group being put into it, but we'd also be discovering new talent and bringing them in. And my job was going to be social media outreach and promotions, and also eventually contribution.
Well, you have to take in consideration, we looked at C. Michael for his artistic ability to be able to do promotional materials. And so when Nita was brought in as his proxy at one point.
That's right. I couldn't remember the word.
Yeah. And I was, it was, well, Nita started asking some very business-like questions.
Well,
I'm like,
C. Michael was brought in to do work that Eric was too busy to do.
Exactly.
That's what I was understood. That's how I kind of
Eric, how busy were you?
Nobody asked me to do anything.
That's not what I heard.
Rob made it very, he made it seem like you had been asked.
Oh,
Eric,
not only that, Rob,
would you have time to have done promotional work? Just a second, see. Eric, would you have had time to do promotional work?
Sure, but I kind of need to know what I need to do so I can put it into my schedule.
Somebody would have had to have communicated with you that work needed to be done.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, C. Michael's there.
It was all a process to get rid of Eric, to set down that, look, he's too busy or he's not committed enough.
Because he's not towing the line.
Yeah.
He's got to go.
Yeah. And so Rob and I had a conversation because I was like, well, what is, like, like I said, I like Nita. She's got a lot of energy, but I've never met her before. And I don't know that she has the skill sets to take over for what we had brought C. Michael in for. Explain to me why that is something that needs to happen, which was never done. At that point, I think I became a target.
But I'm asking.
Well, that's because you were asking questions.
Yeah.
How dare you?
But my question is this: but did you know what I was being brought in for as far as promotional materials was concerned?
We had only briefly discussed that. That's why your name came up to begin with.
Yeah.
Was for promotional materials. And Mike Seeley's name was brought up for marketing. Because again, as the kind of the idiot behind this whole thing, I was trying to find people that fit specific roles. We don't need 2 or 3 people doing internet marketing. We don't need that.
No.
We need people to hit a specific area so that they can do those jobs.
You wanted to get back to the job definitions like it was spelled out for originally when Terraform was started.
Exactly.
That had already been splintered and spread throughout everybody.
Let me add this.
Just the one person.
Let me add this. Eric and Trico and I have a guys' night, and we try to get together once every 2 months, once every month. Usually we go out for BJ's, the restaurant, not the anyway. So
glad you made that clarification.
And so we go out to this restaurant, and I remember when we had brought C and Celie on, because I looked at Eric and I said, our replacements are here. I don't know if Eric remembers that, but I said our replacements are here because
Eric, did you remember that?
Yes, yeah, I remember that.
Okay.
Because so the vibe we got, it wasn't even. I mean, it was like, I want you to know what I'm doing. I'm I'm bringing in 2 people. I'm going to get rid of you guys. And so it didn't seem like that much of a shock to me, at least, when when those power plays were made. So yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead, but
okay, then let's stake this. Where are we
right now? At this point, the campaign was either starting or had started. We're kind of in that
for the continuum book.
For the continuum book.
Yeah.
We knew Rob was very intentional. Like, we want to make sure the optics are right here. We want to make sure that we get through this campaign without any issues. So nobody start anything. But on the 20th, as soon as this is over, I want to have a meeting, and we're going to get rid of Eric. And then somewhere in the midst of that, those kind of a couple of weeks went, and it was really focused on that campaign and trying to get that to be successful. And the new contributors, Nita, we agreed to bring Nita in for that role, for whatever role she was going to play. I was told that she could be an editor, and I'm like, okay, well, if she does editing and things like that, that helps us in the process.
I had talked with Eric. You were told by Rob.
Yeah, and I talked with Eric at this point, and I knew that Eric was free to do the things that we brought Seeley in to do. So we had a conversation through Messenger. I had talked with Varian, and we were cool with things. And so in my mind, I knew that he was going to try to get rid of Eric. I wasn't going to vote in that sense. I know Varian wasn't going to vote in that sense. And so there was 3 people to vote no for that, and 2 people probably would have voted yes, assuming, because Rob made it very clear that Meredith was on his side with this in every conversation that I had. And so I figured Meredith and Rob will vote to get rid of Eric, but the 3 of us aren't. And then at that point, we need to turn our fingers towards the triangulation and the misdirection that Rob has been going. We need to deal with Rob as being the problem that he's been in the company, running off Brian, who was a fantastic contributor. In fact, one of the first people to actually produce a script that would have gone into the 3x3, and how all of that stuff took place. But then I started realizing that Nita's asking questions about business, and Seeley's asking questions about business. And I'm like, is he trying to get them to be a voter, to be able to vote? Because we agreed they wouldn't be able to vote yet. They were their probationary. You don't bring someone in to the company for 2 weeks and then let them vote on a founding member being able to be in the company or out of the company. That's not how this works. Now, let me rewind a little bit. Brian K. Morris had the foresight when he gave his resignation. He said, Luke, my 16% you have control of. If you need it, you can pull that out of your pocket. And I never mentioned it because I hope to God that I would never have to use that.
Okay.
I had 20% of the company. Everybody else, the other members, had 16% of the company. Brian K. Morris, until the day it was dissolved, was still a member of the corporation. And so when we had meetings where it would include him, I included him because he was legally bound to Terraform Comics LLC.
Okay.
And it was to that point when I realized, like, oh my God, we're going to have to use this. Like, this is not going to go well.
The triangulations had gotten so bad.
It had gotten out of control.
Yeah.
It had gotten completely out of control. And the straw that broke the camel's back was Terrible Eric, the villainous, dreaded dinosaur man, did a podcast on Indie Volt Radio about web comics. And there was one particular creator that had done something kind of out there, canceled their campaign, refunded everybody's money, and went and took his book to web comics.
He was taking a bold, independent move.
Super bold. And so Eric covered it on the show.
Yeah.
Now I have.
Well, in fact, we had already had him on Livewire.
Yeah.
At this point, because he popped on impromptu, because when we heard what he was going to do, we're like, what in the world? What is he thinking? What's going on here? And he was gracious enough to pop in and to pop on and explain some of his reasoning. Eric thought that was a hell of an idea because he had a webtoon show going on. So of course he needed to come on and explain his reasoning on that web digital webbing show, or the webtoon show. which was just
Well,
a
what
natural
happened
thing to do.
Mhm.
Yes.
What happened was he and I'll say his name, Tyler Carpenter, did a show. He decided he was going to take his talents to webtoon. He had a campaign. He canceled his campaign at $3,000. Said, I'm going to put it on webtoon for free. This Indie Vote is for the media. It's news. I might not. I like to cover everything that we can. That's news, so we covered it. Well, Eric said, "Hey, I'll do a show." So Eric did a show. It was Eric's baby. When I say, I'm not saying that shit blame.
It fit the criteria of the show too.
Exactly. When I give someone a show on Indie Vote, it's their show. Nita and Meredith can attest to that. You have on who you want, except for that one son of a bitch. But it's one person we haven't. Don't worry, it's not who we're talking about now. It's just there's one person that can never come on Indie Vote.
Separate.
And his name rounds.
You don't have to name him.
Yeah,
you don't have to name him. I prefer you didn't.
Yeah,
just go on.
Yeah. So he can never come on. But the thing is, I got a message about 2 days later. The show had been up for like 2 days, I think. And it was from Rob. It was a message. And it said, nice to see that you're promoting people who hate Terraform. And I said, what people hate? What are you talking about? Who did I promote? And he says, Tyler Carpenter. And I said, what? And I'm like, he was on whatever show. People told me he was on the show, by the way. So, he hadn't even verified.
People.
Yeah, people.
Again.
So, I'm like, look, bro, I'm not going to tell you who to have on your show at all. I don't tell you to have on your show. You can't tell me who to have on mine, but that's Eric's show, and Eric's allowed to have on that show whoever he wants.
And this was already months after he had told Meredith that you had served him with a cease and desist.
Right.
And he had to pull all of his programs, and Meredith had to pull all of her programs
because
off of Indie Vote.
Because I'm a Terraform guy, I'm a partner, and I shouldn't be fraternizing on people who think bad about Terraform. Well, here's the problem. I said, can you show me where he said anything bad about Terraform? And I was presented 2 links. Guess what? Tyler never said anything bad in those 2 links about Terraform. He was critical of Rob, not of Terraform, but the two had become intertwined. Mm-hmm. So now to say anything bad about him was to say anything. Was talk about all of us. And I'm like, he's talking about you, not us.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to piggyback on that for a second. Mm-hmm. He had become he always would talk about how egos shouldn't be a part of this, but there was one ego that overtook everything. And it came to the point to where if you talk bad or you are critical about Rob, you're critical about Terraform.
Well, and I remember it was first thing in the morning. I literally rolled over and read this message, and I got upset. And I bounced in the chat, and I feel bad because Nita and Meredith are reading this, and I'm just telling them like, look, I don't, he's not even talking. He was talking about us. And by the way, shouldn't we be trying to extend olive branches in? He didn't say anything bad in that video. He's on there with a Terraform founder. If he said anything bad about the company, wouldn't that make him look bad if he was talking negative about the company? Wouldn't that make him look bad? And he's like, oh, okay, I see how it is, Varian. I see how it is. Well, don't protect me. I'll always protect you. And I'm like, that's not what this is about. And he just keeps going.
That sounds a little manipulative. That's what he told you.
And I'm like, yeah, well, see, but see, I've had several girlfriends that way, so I see what was going on. So I'm like, that's not going to work for me. That's not going to work for me. So I get mad, and I was livid. And I'm telling you right now, I was pissed. I picked up the phone, and I actually phoned Luke.
That never happens, by the way.
That
never happened.
It's 9 o'clock on a Friday morning, and I'm standing in the church doing some work.
Yeah.
And my phone rings, and it says Varian Grant. And I'm like, oh, here, hell's about to break loose. I just know it because I had seen the message that was posted earlier. And so Varian and I have a conversation. and everything he says is validated. Everything he says is right. And I said, look, he brought it up in the group with everyone. I know what he's going to do. I know that he's trying to get rid of Eric on the 20th. You know that as well. I know that he's trying to get rid of you, Varian. He's been working me for months to try to get rid of you, Varian. I'm not going to vote that way. It's not going to happen. I said, I've worked too hard. I've invested way too much into this company. The whole vision that Nita talked about, like she loved the vision of Terraform. That was what we had birthed in those original conversations before the company had started. I said, this is what I'm passionate about. And everybody said, me too. And everyone that was passionate about that joined together for this. And that I saw that being destroyed, knowing where he was wanting to go with it. And I said, Varian, here's what I want you to do. I said, I want you to bring that up, bring that grievance in the group, and I will support you in the group. Since he posted it so all of us could see, this needs to be a conversation that happens with everybody. And just before that, when Nita, I don't even know who orchestrated it, but there was a problem between one of Rob's IPs that he had done with Eric, and they didn't have a contract for it. And so Nita said, hey, I'm concerned about the contract thing if something happens. At that point, we all knew that Rob was going to try to get rid of Eric. And so that could potentially form some kind of a issue with contracts if Eric got mad about it. But what no one else knew is I wasn't going to vote to get Eric out. Like Eric he's my friend. I like Eric. He's a hard worker. He's a good collaborator. I'm not letting another Brian K. Morris leave my company. It's not going to happen. So I wasn't going to vote that way. And Meredith will tell you, when you look back at all the conversations in February, the tone changed, because at that point I knew I looked at where the fires were, and I saw who was holding the matches, and I knew who my problem was. And then I was just trying to determine whether or not the friendship that he had cultivated with me was real or not. And I started to determine that it wasn't real at all. That was the hard part for me.
So we get in the StreamYard, and it's Nita, Meredith, myself, Mike Sealy, and Rob. And I come in and I'm trying to remain calm, and he's on the warpath. He's throwing around a lot of people are telling me, a lot of people say, you know, there's no screenshots of these people. There's no emails. There's nothing you can provide to your partners, by the way. And he said something, and that means that everyone lies in business, Varian. And no one said anything. And that's when I'm like, what? No one. Everyone just looked at the screen like, like we were all that sick.
Nita, do you want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, Nita was just shaking her finger wildly. Well, They're probably in agreement to that.
She remembers it. She remembers it, but it was like he's saying this, and then the thing that set me off, and this is where I lost it, was he said, "Well, Van, we all know that you're giving information to Randy," and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, are we hearing this? That this guy is saying that I'm giving? He's just said that I'm being called. Like." The reason why I was being called to the carpet shifted. It went from I had Tyler Carpenter on IndieVolt to I'm not in the meetings enough to I'm giving up information to the meetings that I'm not in. And no one realized how sick that was. And I went off and I'm like, look, you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the gaslighting. I'm tired of this BS. I'm being accused of something that I'm not doing. I'm not sharing any information. What information am I sharing? And that can be that was never presented. It was I'm hearing rumors. What rumors?
Right.
Just that one. Oh, people will tell me information. You're giving up information. What information am I giving up? Our info. What info? What people? What names? Give me receipts. You can't give them to me. You're bullshitting. So you're bullshitting then or you're bullshitting now. Which one is it? And that was the moment I went off, and Meredith had to calm me down. Meredith said, Varian, you have to shut up. Because I told him, I said, you know, he had this thing where, and everyone will start nodding. You'll watch. Hey, Meredith, remember that thing you said? You were a genius.
It was always something that was projected on to like what I said.
Now let's not drag this past.
I just want to say that
I know you're presenting that, but let's stick to a line here.
So when I was put out, I knew at that moment I wasn't coming back because he wasn't going to let us come back. When I left that chat, I knew that was it. That was it, that he was going to go try to start his own thing, because at some point it went from, well, we're going to vote Eric out, to we got to get rid of Luke, because Luke came in the chat and supported what I was saying. And it's like, we got to get Luke out. We have to get Luke out of here. He's destroying the company. And I remember saying, I'm not voting against that man out of this company. I won't do it. And I knew at that moment I was gone. And, you know, I never was invited back, which was, you know, fine. I didn't enjoy, you know.
You were never invited back, what? Into more meetings?
Well, the vote that was presented was never to remove Luke. The vote that was brought forth for Luke was to take the position of editor-in-chief from Luke, because Rob felt that Luke needed to be brought down off his high horse and we needed to be equal partners.
Well, suddenly Luke has a high horse.
Yeah, that's how it was presented.
Okay.
I remember
Someone
I
must
said,
have stole my high horse. I don't even know where it's at this point.
A hobby horse.
I would not vote on it, and that made me even more of a bad guy.
Yeah, Varian was very upfront with me about it. Now, what Rob doesn't understand is that particular StreamYard, I was trying to get in it. I was doing work, and I was had my son at a barbershop, and it was a Friday. I was busy. You know, I have a life, and
right.
These meetings get called, and you know, crap
and go on for hours.
Yeah, and so, but I tried to get in on that, and I would get in the back room long enough to hear Rob screaming about how he's going to end Brian K. Morris and how he's going to get rid of Luke and all of these things, and just going off manic, screaming like a madman.
Why Brian was long gone.
He was still vilifying everybody that he felt like contributed to it, because Brian and I were still friends. Eric and I were still friends. Varian and I still friends. I didn't have a problem with any of these people. And the common denominator was Rob. And
he had to splitter you apart, though.
He did. And they think, what you can't do that to me, because I'm willing to talk to people. I'm willing to talk to them if they want to talk to me. And Brian and Eric and Varian were always willing to have those conversations with me. So there wasn't any splintering there. And so I get a phone call from Rob, and Rob says, hey, I get a message, like he's trying to call me, and I'm ignoring it. I go out to lunch. I just need to clear my head. You know, I know that they're trying to vote me out of my own company. I thought that Rob was a friend. I held on to the fact that he was sincere about those faith conversations that we had, where he was like, you know, I'm questioning faith. And the whole time, you people, most of you know me to the point to know that my faith is paramount, and that every relationship I have, I want to point people to Jesus as best I can. And if people ask me, why did you work with Rob? Because I wanted him to see how a Christian behaves in business. And the whole time, in retrospect, I feel like I was being manipulated. So in that moment, I was coming to that realization that, man, I misjudged this person, and here I am in this really bad situation. And he starts messaging me. I need to talk. I don't need to talk to my partner. I need to talk to my friend. And I'm like, for 1 second, I messaged him back. I said, Rob, I need time to think through this. Don't you think that I'm hurt by what you've done? You keep playing the victim, like, woe is me. Luke, you've hurt me, but you sent daggers through my back. I defended you publicly to all of the critics, and the critics are probably watching tonight. And they're probably, they knew that this was going to happen, and they told me this was going to happen. And they're probably one of the many people that's right now watching this live. It was a tough realization. And immediately, as soon as I said, no, I'm not going to have that conversation with you right now, that's when he started this campaign to get rid of me. And I said, look, I'm going to take the weekend. I'm going to decide what's going to happen with Terraform Comics. I'm convinced that Monday morning, we will all still be making comics, but not all of us will be making Terraform Comics. And that's when I pointed out the fact that Brian K. Morris, who still has a vote, has given his percentage to go whatever direction I feel needs to happen. I already have 25%. I already have 20% of the company. I didn't want to have to pull that card and to be that guy But man, it was such it was such a shitstorm that there was no other way around it. It had to happen. I had conversations with Varian. He goes, dude, you're just going to have to reboot this whole thing. And I go, yeah. I said, I think I am. It's going to have to just be completely rebooted, because not only was we dealing with the triangulation, the fires that were in there, the public persona of, while everybody else was working and doing their thing, Rob was doing so many shows and taking credit for so much of what Terraform was, and had made the public persona of Terraform Rob Anderson. The graphics, the clustered graphic design, the random just multiple title things, just all of those things that we said, look, Rob, you've got some serious talents, but
now
graphic design wasn't one of them. That's what Eric was there for. Like everything, it just became it became the Advocator, Written Sins, or whatever, with just the TC logo on it.
At this point now, we're all gone. So
Eric had already resigned at this point.
Yeah, Eric resigns, and we're gone now. I mean, I'm just going to move ahead a little bit here, because now we're gone.
Before you do that, Varian, before you do that, we're pressing on 10 minutes after. Meredith probably needs to leave.
Well, yeah, I was going to bring it to Meredith.
Meredith, how long are you going to have to be gone?
Sorry, Randy, can you repeat that?
How long are you going to be gone? Are you going to be
I'm
able
going
to
to be
come
gone
back?
for about half an hour, 40 minutes.
Okay. Is there anything that you want to put in here in case we finish before you get back?
Well, here's the thing. What I'm seeing right now with I just wanted to put this out there because I haven't made it publicly known, because I mean, with the exception of like taking it off of my social media is my title as a founder of Continuum Comics. Why don't we
try to hang on?
Things have migrated into that, and unfortunately, we're getting into a situation where we might get stoned again.
Well, here we'll go, because it's going to take a half hour to go through.
Yeah, Meredith,
this next phase.
Yeah,
we'll probably be here when you get back.
Yeah, because this is jumping way ahead in the timeline, and I really don't want to do that.
And believe me, folks, things get a little bit more crazier from here. So,
this is where it gets really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll be here.
We
don't want to not have Meredith have her say.
Yeah, she needs to have her say.
I think what we need to do now, though, is really allow like Nita an opportunity to because I think it's fair to say this show here does not happen without Nita Lanning.
No.
Yeah.
The rest of us don't. Nobody gets in a room together again without this woman here putting us all together and forcing us to talk, because she's our normal Ray.
I'm just looking at the chat, and Josh says, please, someone plug Gemini sponsor.
Volt 10.
I sure wouldn't have come back to this kind of show, believe me.
Yeah. No. Nita, and I don't think she gets enough credit, and I don't want to make her cry. But Nita, I want to thank you for doing what you've done to put everyone back together in a room and force everyone to talk and to put pieces together, because
and it's about this time in the timeline that everybody starts talking to one another.
Well, no,
not everybody.
Not everybody. No, Nita and Meredith are still working with Rob.
We're on an island.
C is still working with Rob. They're still working on Continuum, but Eric and Varian are comparing notes. Brian is comparing notes with Varian
and
Eric.
Yeah, there was a Varian had a conversation with Brian, and they come back to me where Rob had used my name in some talks he had with Brian to threaten that I was going to do all this fan art and rip Brian off.
Yes.
An issue about that, and I reached out to Brian because I wanted to make sure that he didn't think that of me as part of my character.
And I really didn't. And I wanted to make that clear to Eric. But it was one of these things. By this time, I was feeling on the island, and because I left, and I didn't want to, because I felt I was deserting Luke and everyone else. But I remember one day, and Randy started having me on Sunday Funnies.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, Varian was on, and he came with a question for us all. You know, like, if you knew somebody was doing something bad, would you say something? And I'm like, I'm the first talk. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Yeah. But during this time, and I think Luke will verify, I never inquired deeply about what was happening at Terraform. It said, is everything going okay? Are you doing, was everybody
Brian
doing
only
all right?
asked about me as a friend, how I was doing. He never inquired about the business.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't want to know
at all.
No. Yeah. But, and then the next day I get a thing from Varian, can we talk? And we talked for a good long time, and I opened up. We cleared a lot of the air between us.
That's because a lot of dots were starting to be connected and put into place.
Yeah.
And I
for
found
Varian
out,
reaching out.
I found out that Brian had never said he was mad at me about, you know, or about being online. And
well, see, the thing was, Brian asked me to come on Clever Title Pending, which was on Tuesday, and bumped into the Livewire show. And I said, yeah, Brian, I'll be there. Let's go. Let's talk. And we went way over. I mean, we got to gabbing and talking, and
we were having a good time.
We were having a good time. And it didn't bother me that I knew that Varian had stuff covered, and that this, you know, it was like old comic buddies suddenly sitting here and comparing notes. Yeah. And that's the whole thing. And that's why I wanted to have Brian on Sunday Funnies, because we come from different locations, but similar comic backgrounds, similar fandom backgrounds, and to compare notes. And when those notes, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I would say this, that time was very healing. Because, you know, I was a part of some of those conversations, being able to talk with, you know, freely with friends, and realize as we started comparing notes that, you know, we don't hate each other. We're not. Eric had taken a vacation, was down here, down in Orlando. We went and had dinner with him, you know, and it was like, man, it felt good. And to have the release of drama, of daily conflict, of all of those things, I was able to be more creative, to be more productive. And it was such a healing time. But then but not so much for Nita.
Yeah, no, Nita's nightmare was just beginning.
Yeah.
And then Nita, could you talk us a bit through what happened? I mean, because you were starting to appear on shows. You were a part of you would come on Geekgasm a lot with my wife. What was going on?
Okay, so during that time, I was editing a lot, and Meredith and I were spending a lot of long hours into the early morning trying to take care of everything and make sure that the production was good for the Continuum. Now, there was a group that everyone in this room, except for, I believe, Randy, at one point in time was involved in the Terraform Year 2 chat. I was in that one a little bit, but when I came on before Terraform, as I knew it, transitioned into Continuum Comics, there was another chat that was created, and everyone was supposedly invited into this. And there was there were like, I don't know, man, guys, there were like 5 or 6 different Facebook groups and everything, but there was a main one, and in that group, the constant 3 with the occasional pop-up of Varian, it was myself, Rob, and Meredith. Never saw Luke, never saw Eric, rarely saw V. So it was, these guys don't want anything to do with it. They want to see it fail and da da da.
I was actually in that group. Now there was Eric.
The villain.
By this time, Eric was out of Terraform.
Everybody was a bad guy, but for me,
no, not yet.
It's nothing personal. But Luke and Eric were kind of, I didn't really know them. It was irrelevant. I did bring up to Rob on one occasion that I would like to go speak to Luke Stone myself. And it was like, no, you're going to go stir up, blah, 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 blah. And he was completely villainized, and Eric was too. And so it was nothing for me to write them off. However, the factor that he didn't consider is that before all this, I had already begun a friendship with Varian. And Varian and Krista and I, you know, I was going on their shows, we'd talk, and we were friends. So when he started trying to villainize Varian as well, it started sending up flags. I was like, Varian's not the evil mastermind that he's being made out to be. And it's like, you don't know him, just give it time or whatever. And shortly after that, there were weird conversations in the meetings that Rob, myself, and Meredith would have. Even now, mind you, Celia is a member too, but he's not here. It's just myself, Meredith, and Rob. Somebody's going to Luke. Stuff is coming back to me, and it's getting back to me word for word. So somebody within our group is going over there and talking. The very first time that happened, I had a stabbing feeling in my freaking gut because I knew that this was shifting towards me because I was the only one out of the group that was in communication regularly with anyone. Mm-hmm. So I started trying to distance myself. I started minimizing my appearances on Geekgasm. When I would go on, I would show up right before showtime, do the show, and the second we'd hit the green room, I'd be like, I gotta go take care of the kids and bail. Because
now, before all of this happened, though, Rob had talked you and Meredith into doing a show counter programming to Geekgasm on Wednesday nights.
I'm trying to remember. Oh, God, it all runs together.
Am I wrong on that, Varian?
No, I remember they had started.
It only ran for a couple of weeks.
Now I can't say that he put it in their heads to do it, but
okay.
They did run a show, but it only ran for like a couple weeks.
That wasn't our show. That was another company.
Okay.
And that was on them, and it was scheduled, and I wasn't involved in it. That was a show that C was doing, but I was unable to get on Geekgasm because somebody had to wrangle the kids while that was going on.
Okay.
But it became a thing of like, I remember I sensed the tension with Nita because in the brief time I had known her before, and even now, Nita's a free spirit. She'll stick around, she'll talk, she'll joke. Right after the continuum was started and I was out, she didn't communicate anything to me. She would pop in the show. She was very guarded. That's not Nita. She's not like that. She was not communicating. She would pop in, show would start, show would end, she was gone. And that's how she did it, quick and dirty. And if she showed up, there started to be some points there where she just didn't show up. She said, no, I can't do it tonight, which, it sucked because you knew why, but,
Right.
Also at this time, though, there was some problematic legal things that were taking place. Mm. So we had right after we had basically decided that anyone that wanted out of Terraform could leave. So when Nita says that that Terraform transitioned to Continuum, it did not.
No,
Continuum was something all of its own.
Mm-hmm.
I had a decision to make.
I saw it.
Yeah, I had a decision to make on whether or not salvaging Terraform was going to be worthwhile. So at that point, I started having a conversation with Brian, Varian, and Eric. So the four of us started having conversations around what do we do with this corporation that we're on the hook for. Knowing that everybody else had left. And I had consulted a couple of lawyers, and they said, look, and I'd already started to get the sense that there was some things being laid down in the surface that like, oh, well, Luke is the only one that has access to the bank account. So I'm worried that he's not going to give us the money.
Now don't get ahead of ourselves.
I'm actually rewinding.
Well, what happened with the campaign on that Continuum book is that it suddenly switched from Terraform to Continuum.
And that's what I'm talking about right now. Okay. And this is why it switched.
Everybody needs to know.
Yeah. So this is why. So I get consulted about that, and I'm hearing these things. And so the four of us on this side of the screen, over here on this side of the screen, we had decided with the help of legal counsel that the best thing for us to do would be to dissolve the corporation because it wasn't going to be worth trying the work that would be involved to try to reclaim the brand from what Rob had turned it into was going to be too much work. And legally speaking, we didn't want to have anything to do with what happened with the Continuum, because as soon as those two things split, when they took off and said, we're going to be Continuum Comics, it's their thing. Because I said, you can have it, because it was the Advocator. It was never the 3x3 at this point. It was not the 3x3. What I wanted to do with that was something that I was going to continue to take on and do wherever I landed. And they could just have the Advocator, the Continuum, which was the Advocator basically. And so they could continue to take that. I didn't want anything to do with it. And so one of the things that I was advised is that, well, he has contracts with people under Terraform, which is an IEN that you have the majority share of, because at that time, Eric had also said, look, I'm going to do the same thing that Brian did. Because I asked him, I said, are you interested in doing the same thing Brian did? And he goes, yeah, here you go. Make the decisions that you need to make. You know, there's the percentage. So at this point, controlling percentage of the company, if we had to make power moves, we can make power moves. Didn't want to have to, but, you know, we're there in this case. We're trying to save it, salvage, or whatever we can do with this, because it had been, because of, I should have been more hands-on, but because I was so busy, it had just been ran amok.
Everything had been splintered away from you.
It had been splintered away from me. And, you know, looking back in retrospect, by design, that it was intentional from day one. It was like from day one that started to happen.
In your opinion.
In my opinion, and I believe it was.
Everything indicates that it was an intentional splintering. The odd meetings, the groups, the separation, the triangulation.
So whether it was accidental or not, it looked, because of the end result, intentional. That looked intentional. And so, I was advised that you need to demand that he redoes the contracts for the Continuum, so that it's under him and not under you.
Right.
And so during that process, that's when some people left, new things got added into the Continuum. I had to ask to have my art removed, because there was going to be some more racy material, and I don't want my art published next to something else. And when it came to the art for Wolf and Fox, which Eric had colored, I paid for the lettering. I arranged to take care of the coloring for Eric, to make sure he was compensated. I covered the cost of all of that, so that he wouldn't have to, when he had it redrawn, recolored, and those kind of things.
Back when I
assumed that
on the switch from Terraform to Continuum.
Yeah, and I said, look, I don't want my art presented next to the Monsters of Cosplay book. It's an adult themed thing, and I don't want to be next to adult.
Because suddenly Rob had morphed this book into what he wanted, which was a more adult book with adult content. Yeah. Okay.
Well, you know, and I didn't want to have that.
It's also at this point, I thought the book was done. So when Russ contacted me and said, hey, Rob says I need to sign a new contract, I said, well, Russ, we've got a gentleman's agreement for us to print Only Death Can Save Us. So if you can get out of that contract, get out of that contract.
Well,
so the contract was null and void anyway.
Yeah, the contract would have been null and void. So.
Don't sign a new one.
So as the book began to change, we saw the problem there. We advised that they would just cancel that campaign and start over in like 2 weeks. You know, like, you just need to cancel that. But they weren't doing that, and so
they didn't do that.
So we went back and we advised and said, okay, here's what we need to do. And we had the meeting, and we said on what was it, March 12th. On March 12th, there was still plenty of days to the end of that campaign. We officially filed the dissolution of Terraform Comics. I paid for that with help from Brian K. Morris. Thank you. We covered the dissolution of that, and I went to the bank and I closed the bank account that day. And that evening, I sent an email to Rob, Meredith, and kind of their group. And I said, look, we have officially voted to dissolve the company. The company is dissolved, effective today. The bank accounts are closed today. I need you to, we'd already talked about the new contracts, but I said, I need you to figure out what you're going to do when the campaign ends. There's not going to be a place for that money to go, and the EIN that it's under is no longer void. So it can't continue the way it is. And so I spelled that out in the email. I also asked to have my art removed, which my art was removed, but my layouts were used uncredited for the new Wolf and Fox. And then I also asked about in May of 2020, Rob and I had gone halves for a corner booth at Tampa Bay Comic-Con. And so I sent him $312 to cover one half of that booth. And so he secured that space, but it got postponed because of COVID. And then I asked, okay, well, we have this booth that we're still kind of on. I need, I'm happy to either buy your half out or you can buy my half out. But clearly I'm not going to spend 3 days in a booth with this guy, at this point. This is not going to happen. I'm not going to have my product next to his Hugs and Spanks. It's just not going to happen. And I'm like, and I got ghosted on that. And so having, so nothing goes on from there. Varian, I know, is trying to get them, to consider closing down the campaign and all those kind of things, because we've talked with Kickstarter that
I'm sorry, go ahead. I shot a message to Meredith. Well, what happened for me is that I'm happy to report that LifeLock works. I got a message like an hour after, Luke closed that account, saying, "Hey, the bank account that you have in Florida, it was just closed. All your money, if you have money in there, it's gone." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, that bank account's closed." And then I think about the campaign that's running, and I think, shit, where are those funds going to go? Where are those funds for that when that Kickstarter closes? Where's the money going to go? So at this point now, and by the way, the Terraform Continuum book is already shifted now to Continuum Comics. It's now a different product. The graphics are different, and but my mind is still on the people who backed it. For whatever reason, maybe they backed it off of a link that I shared or something. I don't know. You know, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want anybody to not get their product, because I'm thinking if the funds don't get there, they can't pay for the book. No one gets their book. So I was a little worried about that. So I reached out to Meredith. I sent Meredith a message, and I'm like, hey, Meredith, I got this strange phone call from LifeLock letting me know that the account had been closed. There might be an issue with that money. Look in there and find out what you can do, because the campaign is still open. Maybe once again, I think closing it and rebooting it would work.
And Rob was told repeatedly to shut that campaign down and reboot
and again, I was advised to do this by legal and by our meeting that we needed to do this because Rob was already laying the foundation that if that money went into our account, no matter where that money went, I was probably going to get accused of either taking some of the money or taking all of the money. And I was not going to have that kind of accusation pulled against me or any of the other partners that were still technically a part of Terraform Comics. I wasn't going to allow that to happen. And so two different lawyers, but one a friend, one a son of a church member, that I used to go to church with, said you just need to close down, dissolve the company, close down the account so that money can't go in there, so that there can't be any accusations of foul play.
Sure.
Now we should now at this point Nita knows more than we know, because at this point now the campaign closes. Now if you use Kickstarter, that means the money goes, that they take all the money, they accumulate it all, and it's into that account. Well, that account's closed.
It's not there. Yeah.
But and now at this exact moment, talking to Nita now, Nita's starting to become more and more frustrated with her place over at Continuum, because
I've been frustrated. I was 2 weeks in. I was once it became, we were Continuum Comics, it was just a matter of days before I was like, what the fuck have I done? Why am I here?
No, and even over there, Rob is working on triangulation and splittering in order to keep control of that group.
There were multiple meetings that were one-on-one, or myself, Meredith, and Rob, or Rob and Seeley, and it was like, it got frustrating. It was like, and whenever I presented the idea of I would message Meredith, and I'm like, I don't want to meet alone. Because I saw things getting twisted. People that I knew wouldn't say certain things. You I just didn't. I wanted a witness
Mm-hmm.
because I already felt I had been targeted. I was targeted when I was a regular on Geekgasm, because who else within our circle would have been the one that's reporting to Luke Stone?
Right.
Now, that was not said directly until later, and that's Meredith's story to tell, because she's the one who was told that I was never a friend. I was the traitor all along.
She was told that directly from Rob.
Yes.
Okay.
That I was never loyal.
For the record, Nita and I never had a conversation until she was, I think, maybe 2 weeks out from.
It was 18 days after I left Continuum Comics when I messaged you.
The first conversation I ever had.
Yep.
The second, because there was one when I was with Terraform. There was discrepancies over artwork, and I messaged Luke one time and asked him to get together with Eric and Rob and figure out contracts, and that was it.
And I immediately went to Eric and Rob and I said, look, Nita, and I believe Meredith also has some concerns about the contract, which then was brought against me as a grievance, because, well, why did you name drop? Well, we're in a business together. There's no such thing as private conversations. And that was the problem. And that's when I started to realize all these private conversations had become so common that when you have a conversation with someone else and say, well, this actual person has an actual concern, that became the problem, because then now you name dropped. Well, why wouldn't I? You had the actual concern. Well, let me go deal with it and just make sure that all the legals are taken care of. And they were fine. So there was nothing to worry about, thankfully. But that then became fuel about how, well, Luke's not a good editor-in-chief. Actually, that was a great editor-in-chief move. I would expect if I go to Randy and like, hey, Randy, I think I'm having a little problem with C, and then he can go and like, hey, Luke maybe has a little issue with this, and then clarify it, and then get us in the room talking together again, and that's exactly what you need to do.
Yes.
So that was our first conversation. Our second conversation was, like you said, 18 days after you left.
Yep.
But
apparently I've been going through the whole time.
Yeah, I remember Nita after she had left. She had when she came back on some of the shows, she was almost apprehensive, Luke, to reach out to you, because she was like, I don't know how the conversation is going to go, because
yes, I remember that.
Nita, you were a little worried about reaching out to him, and when you did, I mean, I'm glad you guys were able to get again on the same page. And again, I got it. Nita, once again, she made everybody kind of sit and talk and say, no, sit down. We need to discuss what happened. Why do you dislike this person? Because we're not.
Because nothing made sense.
And again, once the dots started getting connected.
Right.
Oh,
so let me ask you, why were you so afraid to approach me? Why were you so afraid to approach me?
We're all bad men.
Because
we were vilified.
You and Randy and Eric were devils, and so was Varian. But see, the saving factor in that was the fact that I had already, just in the conversations we had trusted Varian. I didn't know Randy. I didn't know Eric. I didn't know you. Y'all were easy to write off, but I knew Varian. And even though we weren't like best buds, there was something about Varian and his character that I trusted, and I believed him when he spoke. And so I was not quick to vilify him. Now, when it came to you and being afraid to approach you, initially it was because I was told that I would stir up a whole bunch of strife and I needed to just stay out of it because I wasn't there for the beginning parts and whatever. Essentially, very nicely told to mind my damn business, which is what I thought I was doing.
You would stir up stuff. You'd stir up the truth.
Right. And then later the hesitation came because I resigned.
Were the stories about you were probably wondering what the stories about me were true or not.
Right. And also I did not want to stir up anything at that point because my best friend was involved still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I did not want more drama created for her.
Yeah.
I didn't, it was a mess. It was a confusing, chaotic mess.
Yeah. So then about this time, I know that the campaign was coming to an end. It had come to an end. And I was just waiting for the hammer to drop because, I knew that money was not going to be deposited. We knew that it wasn't going to happen. This is where it gets even, I think this is probably the strangest part. And this is where the illegal activity takes place.
Right.
So I was presented with an email from Rob, again, had not heard back about the table fee for the $312 that I was hooked up with. But I heard, but got this thing, hey, Kickstarter, per your request, is going to transfer the funds over to this other account, but you need to send over this information. And there were 5 points of information. And it required a photo ID so I could prove that, from the account who it is. It required that I have a utility bill with my name on it, which is impossible because I'm a pastor who lives in a parsonage. So there's no utility bill in my name. So that's an impossible thing to do. And the other thing would be a bank statement with redacted information, but it would still have account, numbers and things like that, which I couldn't provide because as a pastor where my bank account is, I'm also, my member number is attached to those bank accounts, which have our church's investments and stuff in there. And I can't provide any information that could potentially be used as identity theft to hurt the church. I need to be a good steward. So I'm like, I'm not going to present that information. And then the last thing was I needed to hold up a picture that had Rob's full name, the name of the campaign, and said that I give over responsibility to this person. But I began to contact Kickstarter about this. And they kept rejecting all of my emails and all of my inquiries because it was coming from the wrong email address. And I'm like, no, I'm the person that you're talking about. Like, so here's what happened. And it kept getting screwed up. Basically what had happened is the Continuum Kickstarter account was made up under, Rob did it on my behalf, used our IEN number, used my bank account information. We sat on a StreamYard like this in the back room and gave the information over so that it could get happened. And then I was never given the login information. I was supposed to be, once he had all that done, he was supposed to email that to me. But when he created that account, created that campaign, I became a authorized collaborator on that, right? Well, as soon as all this stuff happened, I was taken off access from that. I had no access to that whatsoever. But now Kickstarter thinks that they're talking to Luke Stone when it comes to Terraform Comics, LLC, Kickstarter campaign for Enter the Continuum. They think they're talking to Luke Stone. They're talking to Rob Anderson. This is what I found out through many, many interactions with Kickstarter. They believe that they're talking to, but no, they're talking to Rob Anderson. And Rob Anderson is asking me to verify my identity so that he can have Kickstarter transfer funds to his other account. And I'm like, look, because at first what really threw me was that, well, no, I can't just have information for me. I'm one of 5 members of a company. So you need that same information from me, from Brian K. Morris, from Eric Hodson, and from Varian Grant, as well as Rob Anderson and Meredith Logan. You need that information from all 5 of us, because it's a transfer of responsibility from the Terraform Comics EIN over to Continuum Comics. But that's not what it was. So this whole time when I'm like, look, not only do you need this information from all 5 of us, you can't get some of that information from me. And I know darn good and well you're not going to get some of that information from Brian K. Morris and Eric Hodson, because their comment, and they can say it themselves, but they're like, we're not doing any favors for this guy. He had ample opportunity to cancel this campaign and to do the right thing. But he was asked multiple times to cancel the campaign.
So what's happening? So just to clarify, so what you're saying is that there's an email out there that's Luke Stone is communicating with Kickstarter that you don't have control over.
I don't have control over, and I recently found it. The email that they I was told you need to tell them that this is your email address, not my main email address that is with Kickstarter, but this other one called terraformlogistics@gmail.com.
Oh,
that is not my email address. I didn't create that email address.
And Terraform Logistics was talking to Kickstarter.
And that, as far as I know, we never agreed that that email would go on our website, would go. I don't know when and at what point that email was created, but that's the email that Kickstarter was expecting me to communicate to them and send the information to from. And I was supposed to give them that. Mike Seeley is the one that told me, hey, you need to use this email address. And that's what got me searching and digging to find out that it wasn't a matter of the EIN and the corporation that needed to provide this information, but it was a matter of me needing to provide verification of my identity as terraformlogistics@gmail.com.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't a lot of the Terraform emails, didn't they end with terraform.com, or was that not a thing?
Yeah, because we had we had a .com. We never really used those though.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I remember
there was one official email address called terraformcomics@gmail.com. That was the one official email address that myself and Meredith had access to.
Now, I want to take it back to Nita real quick here because, again, I don't think she gets enough credit for what she did. But she, when she got out, and Nita, can you talk about when you left, or do we need to hear from Meredith first?
I left right before Meredith. I think it was within 48 hours of my resignation, Meredith started her process leaving.
Yeah. I think what would be interesting to hear from Nita's standpoint is kind of that whole process of you guys aren't getting the money for this.
Oh no, we were terrified because it came into Luke's not wanting to share information with the Kickstarter, but this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And up until the very end, he was like, and I've got it under control. Well, we had already come to an agreement that if it did not if the funds ended up kicked back to the backers, that we would come out of pocket in force and pay and cover the campaign to make sure that the backers got their books.
Wow.
And it did end up coming out of pocket, but it wasn't that part. I really can't. That's not Terraform related anymore. But it was a mess. It's
still connected to all of this
we weren't
mess.
Told, we weren't told though that they were wanting people's personal information. What we were told is that the campaign Kickstarter had given him a PIN number or something, and that was all you had to do was message them and confirm that. We didn't know anything about at that point in time about the addresses and needing photo IDs and stuff like that, because when Varian messaged me, he's like, why do we need to give this information? And I was like, I don't know, man, you're gonna have to talk to Rob. And I ended up messaging Rob, and he was like, oh gosh, I wish I could find that message.
Yeah, I remember it.
It was like
I messaged
a 6-digit PIN number, and he said that's all they needed, and it was just strictly from you. Nobody else.
I messaged Nita because I messaged Meredith, and I believe Meredith was in the process of moving at that point.
Yeah.
And so she could not be reaching. I know my message was delivered, but she hadn't read it. And so I said, well, I'll message Nita because, again, like Luke said, there was a concern that they were going to speak to all of us because everyone's name was on that EIN. Everyone's name is on that bank account. It's going to say bank account and have all these other names on there, and any company.
Actually, the bank account didn't. We had trouble with that because I couldn't get everyone there because I only own 20% of the company, not 25%. I couldn't open the account without having the rest of you there. So it was an account that I opened.
I meant not the bank account, the EIN. The EIN paperwork.
Yes.
It would have all these additional names on there, and any company worth their salt's going to say, who the hell is Eric Hodson? Where's Varian Grant? Where are they? You have to bring them in too. So I remember messaging Nita, and she, like what she just said, she got back to me. She says, yeah, you know what? And I could tell she was kind of either frustrated with the whole thing because she said, yeah, I don't know. They just need to speak to Luke, but they're handling all that. And when Nita was detached from it at that point, I think. Nita, were you detached from it all, or becoming
Yes,
detached?
yeah, I was I was done. But I wasn't going to tell you that at that point in time. It was a little bit later, like a couple days
Yeah.
later, that I told you I'd already left the company, because I
Yeah.
didn't want it made public. I didn't want to make a stink. My husband had his first sequential art being published through this company. Meredith was still working for them. She's my best friend. I didn't want drama and more dirt. And it was confusing and chaotic enough without anything else.
I know that I got, he had asked us to contribute to the campaign. I don't know if you guys remember that.
I do.
To contribute to the campaign that was running, and I contributed $10 just because I figured at this point I'm a part of the company. I'll probably get a book or two, to have for my own, and maybe one to give away or a couple to give away, and also I'm the distributor, so I'm pretty sure a box is coming. And so I contributed for a sticker, for a Terraform sticker, and my last interaction with him was I got the sticker. It came in a big envelope, and it was really well packed. And I messaged him. I gave him credit. I said, "Hey, I feel like I might actually owe you some money because the packaging you sent this sticker in, it probably costs more to send this than the sticker because it was a big manila envelope, cardboard backing, and a baggie, and it was sticker. Now it wasn't the Terraform sticker I ordered. They had switched it over to the Continuum Comics logo.
Sticker.
But I was hoping to get the Eric logo so I could stick it on the back of his car at some point. But
Eric did a great job on that logo. I liked it. I really did enjoy it.
yeah, I was going to stick it on the back of his car. I really was. I was waiting to stick it on the back of his
He
vehicle.
can still stick that Continuum sticker on the back of his car. I'm sure he'd love that.
That would be great.
He might fight me for that. The Terraform ain't gonna be. It was his art. He can't get mad at me for his art, but
Yeah, that's true.
he might get mad at me for that. But yeah, I got that in the mail, and I will say, look, it was the sticker. Your sticker was well put together. Sticker. I messaged him. I said, hey, I kind of feel like I might owe you some extra money because the packaging alone, you sent, the sticker up here and would have cost extra money. But he said no, that was okay. He wanted to make sure got it in mint condition, and that was the last conversation that I had with him. But it just to sit back with people, to sit back with Nita, and to, I wonder now how many people out there that dislike me that don't even know me, that never,
Right. Never
sat in the
here.
room.
Same here.
Well, I mean, I know I was vilified. Obviously, Nita and I get along great now. Meredith and I were always kind of. I really enjoyed working with her. In fact, her first published work was in the trade paperback. She did 2 pages
Of the
for me,
hybrids.
for hybrids. Yeah, and she's had intended to collaborate on a backup story, kind of like the origin story of one of the villains, because we kind of share an affinity for some of those darker stories and things. And so I always liked working with Meredith. I never liked that she called herself the comic book noob. There were plenty of times when we were in conversations and she would have an idea and her input was downplayed, or Rob's expertise was somehow inflated. But I didn't feel it was fair because a lot of times she had these really great ideas, and I would call Rob on those things. In fact, there was one conversation that ended with me like, this is why people don't like working with you. And then it was a half an hour tirade of why people like working with him. And I'm like, and conversation was over. I mean, that happened sometime in February, and it was frustrating because Meredith and I had lunch. We met at a convention, and we wound up having a late lunch, early dinner. Her and her husband and my wife and kids, and we just had such a great time hanging out with them. And it's so sad that those relationships got hurt because of the actions of Rob Anderson. And Nita, I was vilified to these 2 people. You know, there was things about me that's not true that was told to these two people. And there are people out there right now who do not know me that have heard a narrative by Rob Anderson that doesn't match the reality of who Luke Stone is. You know, and the same is true about Randy and Varian and Brian and Eric, and now even Nita, that there are people out there and Meredith that they hear a narrative about these individuals that's not true, but it doesn't match the reality of those interactions that you have with those people. We have now learned that all of us are perfectly pleasant individuals that love to collaborate together.
Well,
there
For the
are
most
exceptions.
I don't know. I'm pretty difficult to work with.
Right. But see, and again, there's that camaraderie. There's that community that doesn't normally exist within the industry, but there is that here. And those things, when people see that, they're like, well, how is it that they can be like this? And then you say something different about them. And the only way to do that is to keep people from verifying the truth. Yeah. And to try to say that all of us lead these drastically crazy hidden lives, like we are Jekyll and Hyde, like we all are like we are like one of these like John Wayne Gacy, who lived this public life that everyone thought was great, and he turned out to be this mass murderer. You know, like that's the only way to sell the lie, and it becomes more absurd than reality. You know, when you look at it, it's like, well, what is reality? That Rob Anderson vilifies anybody who questions him or hurts his ego. Now I started working with Rob because I saw that he had potential and he had talent, and I still believe that potential and that talent is there. But I pray that one day he will allow his ego to strip away so that he can learn from the people that are around him, because he could be so much better. He could be so much more than. I take full responsibility for Terraform Comics coming to its demise. I do. Because I was the editor-in-chief, and I should have, the first problem was I should have stopped the splintering in communication. I should have done that. The second thing was as we went, like, oh, here's the second issue, here's the third issue. I should have been the one to stop all of those issues.
Well, looking back on it, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, but I don't think you're responsible for a lot of what happened. I think you were taken advantage of in a lot of ways. And, you know, the splintering and the triangulation and all of that, that's not you. That's not on you. I mean, you weren't watching perhaps, but there's the instigator there who came in and decided that they were going to start running things.
You know, I used to make fun of my two sisters when they would come home and they break up with a boyfriend, because they sit there and they say, I can't believe it. I don't know how I didn't see this happening. And I used to joke with them, like, haha, you're an idiot. How'd you not see that guy was cheating on you? And now I get it. Like, because there were things that were said to us that we just took for at face value. Someone's spreading rumors about us. Brian doesn't like me.
Brian's afraid we're raiding his audience.
Yeah,
and I respect Varian so very much, and I'll tell the world that a lot of what I do now is following Varian's example.
Mm-hmm. And I'm stealing from everybody, so
well, I don't. Yeah.
You should see what I got planned for Thursday. Whew. I'm a straight.
And I'll be honest, again, like what you said, Nita is so responsible for this happening. She came to me and she talked to me. She's like, I'm sorry, this is what happened. And I was like, no apology necessary, because I had already come to terms with, I knew what was happening. And
how fitting it was Nita, though. Mm-hmm. The right? One person that he chose to replace everybody, it was fitting that she be the person that's like, I'll bring everybody back together.
Well, I had guilt over it, because when everything started to hit the fan and things weren't lining up, the stories behind the curtain of Randy's treachery and Varian being evil and Eric being everybody was evil, and not just the people involved in Terraform. Suddenly, everybody else in comics was somebody you need to stay away from.
Yeah,
and I take a lot of the blame for what continued after the CCX transition. Well, to me, it was a transition, because totally outside of my character, I am not afraid of confrontation. I will walk up to the biggest man on the face of the earth and put my finger in his chest, and we're going to talk and clear this out. It was totally out of character for me not to go and talk to Luke in the very beginning, in my beginning of the story. And so when it was said and done, it was like, okay, it's time for everybody to get together. We need to lay everything out on the table and hear everybody's side and everybody's story, because nothing makes sense, and it's all chaotic, and it needed to be aired.
Yeah. And that's what's important here. That's why we're here. It's because there's so much out there that it all needs to be not just aired between us, but the reason we're doing this program is to warn people that there are people out there like this. There are times where you get into these associations, or you are think that you're all getting together in order to rise up as a group, and somebody comes in and weasels, and that ego gets in the way, and everything just ends up turning into a cluster.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. And I feel like, there are people in the industry that exploit newcomers. And I can see, that Nita was used as a way. She's being exploited. It's someone that he felt he could manipulate. I feel like Meredith and I were definitely used in a sense to I guess, help his reputation in some way. Because he'd burned so many bridges that I'm learning about now. I didn't know about it before, but I had so many people come up to me beforehand and say, "Don't work with this guy. Don't work with this guy." I even had a couple people like, "Hey, I told you so," and I'm like, "Yeah, I get it." I even think some of that ties back to Indie Volt and his association with the radio program. Yeah, I think it was all to man. There's what word am I looking for? But basically to make his reputation look better. It's like, well, look, Luke's hanging out with me. Luke has a solid reputation in the comic books, in indie comic books. Meredith has a solid reputation with people, and I think that, some of those things, I feel like I was manipulated in those things. And I feel bad about that, because I think that, it's like, man, why wasn't I wiser to those things? But I think what it is he was really good at looking at my sense of wanting people to be redeemable. I believe in the underdog. I believe that people have second chances, that they can change. I believe that anybody can grow. And, when you come to me and say, look, I want to help change my public persona. I want to be, and he said, I want to take a backseat role in the company. That was what he said when he said he wanted to be a part of Terraform Comics. And I believed him. But from day one, he contradicted himself. And that's why we're sitting here today.
It's not just the stuff he told you either.
No, it's not.
No.
And that's just one small. You're one of many that we're finding out as we go along and connect dots here and start communicating, which is key, with each other, and going, hey, did this? No. Did this? No. Well, what about this? No. This never happened. We're still finding out stuff that people were told that never existed, or papers that never existed, or some legal mess that never happened, or whatever. And it all ties back.
Now that Meredith is back,
the one that is splintering.
Yeah, now that Meredith is back, one of the craziest things was to find out, and I don't know, but I had gotten responses to an email from Meredith. Meredith, and I found out in one of our conversations that she didn't recall ever sending that response. And I'm like, well, who did it? Whose words are these? If not Meredith's.
Did you show her the email?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Meredith?
that was for me. That was no, it was mine. It was selective memory that I didn't remember. Okay, maybe it was selective memory. I don't know. There were so many things that were going on that it's all a blur. I mean, unless I literally go back through the timeline and go, this happened, and I've done that over a course of a few weeks, months, where I've seen it, and all of a sudden I saw this break in the communication between Luke and Rob, Brian and me, and Eric. It's just like there was a point kind of early on, because I know that you were sick, and I know that you were really, really busy, and you weren't making all of the meetings that were being called to, right? So it's just like, where is this guy? Because I didn't have that relationship with you beforehand to know who you were, what you did, your work ethic, or anything like that. I had no idea. So I was just like, all right, well, Eric is just out of here. He doesn't care. And so I don't know where we are in the timeline here, because I just
we're done.
Back.
We're
okay,
done.
so but for me,
I think we're up to date. Nita, are we up to date?
yeah. Okay, so for me, I'm trying to think with
You can go back to any point where you can,
okay,
whatever you're comfortable with. You can even pick up where you left off from, and take it, because I know you've got stuff to say.
There were so many things that happened where I take personal responsibility for it, because I am a grown woman. I could have easily gone.
Sorry to interrupt you, but Luke just got done saying the same thing about himself. No, I'm serious.
He's a grown woman.
No,
yeah,
he's got so many things to take responsibility for. Not that he's a grown woman.
Yeah, I mean, I take personal responsibility with that, because I am a grown woman. I could have gone to anybody. I could have gone to anybody. And so it was easier for me to say, okay, you are representing me. You are going and you are speaking to this person and this person on my behalf, because again, we were kind of segregated, and it was just, how many times has he said, remember when you said, and I was like, I know that we've had these conversations, but I don't really remember saying all of that. I may have.
It's hard to remember something that was in a meeting at 3:00 in the morning, because we've been talking after a late night stream, in the green room. It's impossible. And when you start getting gaslit with that, like, oh, remember that one thing? And it goes back to that. Remember that idea you had, or that thing that you said? Wasn't that so great? And it made you feel good about yourself enough to be like, okay, maybe I did say that, if that was such a great idea and you thought so. We just, and then when you're so tired and overworked, and it's like you're arguing over every last little thing, when you have to fight for 45 minutes over the pronunciation of the word library.
Yeah. And that carried through.
Everybody's shaking their head. Meredith and Barry are shaking their head.
Through.
I remember that one.
Comma was a battle.
Every
and Luke,
comma.
I mean, you and I hadn't talked for a good long time. In fact, this is the first time that I think I'm sitting in a room with Brian.
Yeah, we had some words.
Yeah. But there are certain things that I take full responsibility for, because I was perfectly capable of, but I didn't. Now, I don't know, Nita, how far into Continuum did we get into?
Barely. I didn't, but
she scratched the surface on the.
You needed to be here for that, because a lot of that is us.
A lot of that is being carried over. I mean, you want to talk about a repeat situation? We're looking at that right now.
Go ahead and get into it.
Go for it.
Well, okay, so
they already know the whole scenario of the EIN and closing down the corporation,
when
and the money not being
everything
released.
was happening, when we got that notification from Varian. Yeah, when we got that,
Varian mentioned an email because he got a LifeLock notification
from LifeLock about the bank closing down.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, it was just like, oh crap! Okay, now we need to get banking. It's like, okay, now we're starting to get Continuum Comics LLC. We need to make sure that that is set up because we've got this ongoing campaign. All right, so going back to this, the whole campaign for Continuum Comics. Okay, and we were being fed all of this information, like this step is going to happen, this step is going to happen, this step is going to happen, and everything that he said came to fruition, except for the fact that Kickstarter never released the money. Kickstarter never released the money. And so here it is that Nita, myself, Rob, and Sealy were in a room. We were assured that all of these events were going to happen. But the end result was that the money didn't get released. Now they're in a panic because you got to deliver the books, right? Now, without being notified, Nita and I did not agree. One of the parties decided to front the money to get the books printed. Now, wait a minute. I didn't agree to that. I did not agree to be in debt to any one of the parties.
No,
because we were waiting.
If you take it back just a little bit further, we said worst case scenario, we would each go in.
We would each go in. So now we're looking at this situation where one of the partners fronted all the money, and it's like, okay, now he's done that. Now I'm invested because we have to pay for shipping for these books that I didn't agree to buy or be in debt to. So now I'm in with the initial deposit for the bank account and to make sure that shipping costs were covered. So now I'm in for $360, not including the cost of the LLC, which I just consider that a write-off. Okay. Now, so we were hustling, and I'm results oriented. I am task oriented. I went in and I got the EIN, and that is under my name. Luke would know this. Anybody who's put in for an EIN, it's under your name, and you can add your business name. Mm-hmm. So it is under my name. I opened up the bank account, but I have the other three as not signatories, but they are on the account because we were equal share partners. Okay. The LLC is something that I opened up, so I was the managing partner in that. Now we're going back about 7 weeks, Nita. About 7 weeks where we separated from Continuum Comics.
May 8th.
Yeah. Okay. May 8th, separated that. I literally filled in the paperwork to remove Nita and myself from the LLC. I filled in the paperwork, but because my name is getting removed, it has to go to another manager. Well, I've been checking after about a month. I kept on checking, and I said, why is my name still there? Well, this past week, I said, hey, what's going on? I didn't get to it. So now I am fiscally responsible. My name is all over this company. I don't want to be financially responsible for what's going on moving forward. Okay? They had 7 weeks to take care of this paperwork. And now they're doing this again. This is Terraform Comics 2.0. Because, again, I have no choice. Luke had no choice because it is dissolved into something. You have no responsibility, no more responsibility for it. You have dissolved this company. You have to get rid of that fiscal responsibility because you don't have hands on it. You have no control at all.
Yep.
And yet your name's on it. My name is on Continuum Comics. They had 7 weeks to take care of this. And now they're getting ready to launch another Kickstarter.
Tomorrow.
When are you going to learn?
Mm.
And if this is something that you wanted to have control over, why did you not do all of this stuff yourself? It begs the question, what the hell is going on?
Did he
Okay.
pay you
Now, and I'm
any
not
money for the incorporation?
We put in Nita, all four of us put in for the
We went
corporation.
equally,
Okay. Okay, good. I mean, because you guys know when we dissolved the LLC for Terraform Comics.
I got nothing back. I'm still in for 360 for the bank and for shipping.
Yeah. Well, and I paid you and Rob
Yes,
back
you
for
did.
your investment.
Yes, you did.
There were even fees taken out when you sent the money to me. I paid you the money back minus the fees.
Yes.
Well, so that you got your full investment back.
Yep.
And that's kind of been my method the whole way. And that's why I'm into this thing, a few $1,000s, because I wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of. I didn't want, like you, I don't want to be fiscally responsible for a company or for a product that I have my name is on that, but I don't believe in it. I know that you and Nita worked so hard on Enter the Continuum. I know you did, but there's still too much of that poor editorial in that project. And it's sad because you guys worked so hard. You worked so hard, and so much work was put on you to accomplish Rob's dream. To the point yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that Nita had mentioned earlier, Meredith. I'm not even sure I know, because honestly, we don't all sit around and talk about this. This isn't what we talk about. But
No.
Meredith, what happened like when you left? Because I know Nita said that there was almost there was a point there where it was like, okay, I'm going to drive a wedge between these two. I got to get these two separated. I don't like this Meredith Nita tag team. WWE creatives got
Nita, did you tell them about like my 24-hour rule?
No.
Okay.
No, but I did tell them from about 2 weeks in. I was like, I'm leaving. I'm going.
Every time Nita was just, and it was fairly early on that Nita was pretty much out of there. And I kept on telling her, I said, I think we can salvage this. I think we can salvage this. I'm like, give it 24 hours. Because I have that 24-hour rule. You let the dust settle, and you deal with it the next day when you've got a fresh mind, fresh eyes, and all of that. And she kept on going, and I'm like, 24 hours. And again, maybe a couple days later, give it 24 hours. Give it 24 hours. And the last time, she's like, I think I'm done. And I was like, okay. And she knew then that it was just like, okay. And then she was out of there the next day. And I'm like, I need to have one more meeting.
I mailed that resignation within 45 minutes.
She
okay.
did. And I said, I need to have one more meeting. I need to see what the heck is going on here. And it was that whole triangulation thing. I knew going in, because I could see the way they were sitting. They were all up like this, and they were ready. And I was basically told that I was the comic noob. And yeah, everybody up.
yeah, we all got.
Y'all paying attention? Yeah. And they were ready. And I was basically told I was the comic noob. I didn't have any. It wasn't said in so many words, but I brought no value.
You brought no value.
I brought no value.
Yeah.
Holy cats.
Because at that point we were done. I mean, what was he going to? What could he do with me now? If I was going to, and then if I was at that point, it was 2-1. And so that triangulation happened right there. Mm-hmm. It was Robin Seeley, and I saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, okay, I'm done. But here's what I'm going to do. Okay. I don't like burning bridges. And I said, take care of the paperwork. I'm out of here. Let this be a smooth transition. Make sure that this is all done before you move on. And it didn't happen. Why? That's not on me now. And now I am in a position where I really have to be a bitch. Okay. And Nita and I, we even said it. He's like, well, he's going to get stoned again.
Guarding yourself does not.
He's
make
gonna
you a
get
bitch.
stoned.
Am I an adjective now?
Take
You
care of
are.
your-
Luke.
I'm a verb.
Taking
Congratulations on the
care of
promotion.
yourself is not being a bitch.
Well, I knew that I was the villain in a number of stories now, but
I was gonna comment on. Yeah, I was gonna comment on how Luke's favorite Bible verse is named from Luke. I mean, that's kind of.
that wasn't my favorite. I was referencing a particular verse from that
But
book.
I want to say though, I want to talk just briefly. I know we got to get out of here and wrap this up, but I want to talk briefly about the kind of the emotional stuff because
We do. It's been over 3 hours, and we've kept almost the entire audience. We deeply appreciate everybody listening.
because Nita is I don't think people realize how tough Nita is. Like when she says she'll go up to the biggest guy. Yeah, when she said she'll go up to the biggest guy and put her finger in his chest, I believe her because I've seen her get mad, like, and get upset. But I've also seen when Nita came out of, because much to her credit, her professionalism, she had left and didn't tell anybody. She was gone and kept that shit a secret forever until Meredith was out, and then she was like, okay, hey. And they did that. They did it like really low key. It was just they just started broadcasting their own stuff away from that platform.
Mhm.
And I would talk to Nita, and I would sense this. And Nita, you can tell me to shut the fuck up. You can, but there was a pain.
Yeah,
There was
sorry.
a pain. I'm sorry. There was a pain. Like there was some emotional damage done to this woman in 2 weeks. And it's like, what kind? I mean, that's effed up.
Well, the thing is I've been the underdog, and that's where I got lured into believing Rob to be a good person. I've been the one who felt like the world was against them, so I could relate and being an innocent party. And so that's how he got me. And I would have been the most loyal friend that man could have ever known for the rest of our freaking lives had he not flipped scripts on us like he did.
Nita, I was loyal to him. I defended him to many of the people that are watching right now. I
I
defended him
stuck
publicly.
my neck out
A lot
a
of us
bunch of
have
Well,
times.
we all started out
I
thinking
have-
he was a great guy.
Yeah.
Right.
I
And
have
was
said
very
that he
helpful.
was like a little brother to me.
the
Mhm.
part that got me is I was loyal until the end, even to the point when I resigned. I still wanted to maintain a friendship. I just would not ever work with him again on any professional level. But what killed me is immediately upon my resignation, instead of coming to try to talk to me or anything, he immediately began stabbing me in the back. He started saying that I was never a friend. He should have never trusted me. And that to me, that was a big deal because I was nothing but fucking loyal.
And you've even approached him because, I mean, there are streams that he's had where he has called you the most loyal friend. If you want somebody in your corner, you want Nita in your corner. And you said, well, which one is it?
That's
Am
all part of the
I-
grooming, I think, though, isn't it?
Yes.
The compliments and telling people how great you are, how talented you are, how invaluable you are to him. But as soon as you're no longer a value, all of that becomes a lie. It's not there. And I'll be honest, we've been talking for 3 hours and 22 minutes, and this is the longest conversation any of us have had regarding this topic.
Yeah.
And it's in a way we're learning things even that we didn't know before.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's a bit healing.
Yes.
But and there's, like, I mean, there's still more stuff. But I know we won't get into it, but there were still more things with just like watching, with us all coming together, like you said, the healing and finding out that there was like, again, we were never supposed to all get in a room together again. Like there was so much
Oh, yeah.
anger and animosity between us. that wasn't going to happen.
Well, see now, okay, so like when Nita and I first started with Ragin, that was before we left Continuum Comics. You know, I mean, these were things. And how many times did he come up to us and say, "You're wasting your time. Don't do that."
All the time.
Because
because
it was diverting our time and effort from what he was doing or what he wanted us to do.
Yep.
So, and we were like, wait a minute, you're launching a show every other day. You've got your Giannis going on. You're doing on shows and all this stuff. I'm like, but that's not okay for me. And I don't know, Nita, did you tell him about the pulling my story?
Oh no, that was
okay.
was your part,
So when we were in this whole meeting and the dust had settled and we were separated and we got our LLC and we're all celebrating and stuff like that. And Rob comes up to me and he says, "Hey, you know what would be really hysterical? Because Luke, when did you launch your campaign?
Which campaign?
The most recent one.
Oh, well, the most recent one was I've launched 2 since
this most recent one.
Oh, this
okay,
most recent
anyway.
one I launched, I think, July, June? No.
Okay,
what day? Month?
So
May.
right
We did May.
before the launch, I think you were planning it, and we were seeing like that you were advertising it and everything, and we were laughing and stuff like that. You know what would be funny is if he's planning on putting in that trade paperback. He's like, you should pull your story. You should totally pull your story. Oh my God, the look on Luke's face. And we laughed. I laughed. And then the next day, that 24-hour rule, I was just like, wait a minute. Why would I pull the very first story, the very first publication that I was ever in? I'm like, what purpose would that serve but to hurt me? Wait a minute. What the hell is going on here? Why would that even pop into somebody's head to help a creator self-sabotage? And I laughed about it. Like, what kind of freaking fool am I?
Let me say
goodness
this.
I didn't.
That was part of your awakening.
Let me say this. He didn't want us collaborating anymore. I spoke earlier while you were gone that we had plans to collaborate beyond even just that 2 pages, and we still do. We've recently said, we are going to collaborate together. But here's the thing. None of us were supposed to be in the room together again. Like Varian said, this was never supposed to happen. But thanks to Nita, we are. Now, some of us had been in the room with each other. I'd been in a room with Brian, and with, Randy and Varian. When it all came down and I knew that I was going to have to lose Terraform, I wanted hybrids to go somewhere, and Randy was interested. And I was more than interested in being a part of what he wanted to create over at Era Comics because I was a big fan of that. But here we are. What we tried to endeavor to start with Terraform Comics, where people band together with their unique abilities and their talents and gifts to help everyone move over the finish line or to break through the walls that maybe have been holding us back. That's exactly what we're doing now, but we're not doing it under one banner. It's not, my publisher is Randy, so Arrow Comics is my publisher, but my own company is developing the IPs that I send to Randy, and if he thinks they're any good, we publish them. Right? Brian K. Morris talks about these things and still is a public face for all of these creators, not just one company, but all companies. Nita and Meredith are working on social media for multiple people. Varian is distributing multiple people, and Eric is working on art for multiple people. So we're still doing what we're doing, but we're still helping each other to get where we're going. And so it's possible. And I think the biggest takeaway is be careful who you partner with. As soon as you see the egos, get away from those and communicate your vision, communicate your hope, your where you want to go with things, and you can build that. Because right here with the 7 people that are in this conversation, 8 if you count Seeley, not Seeley, but C. Michael. C. Michael Lanning. If you count 8 if you count Russ Leach, we are on the verge of doing exactly what Terraform Comics had aimed to do. But we're all individuals, but we still work together collectively where it fits.
Yes.
but we still have our own identities as well. And I think it's just,
And
we're seeing what works.
That's very important, is to keep your own
Yeah.
identity. That's part of that's part of the driving force for independent and alternative comics in general, is that you get to say what you want to say. You're not kowtowing to a corporate entity. You're creating your own IPs. You're printing on your schedule, on your time. That's alternative. That's independent books to me. Go ahead.
It should be too important to note that, again, I don't think anybody here, like, we all like came together to create this company that we thought, could do some good. It wasn't, I remember one of the first times that I kind of thought, oh man, it's kind of egotistical. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, when we first started, it was, hey, let's get some content together and release.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened in between 2 days. It was, here's the name of the company. We're going out there and we're putting out this whole, we're putting out this call for talent. And it's like, whoa! I thought we were going to go work on some books first and launch with like a title. Even if that was hybrids, this was one of them. At least one additional one, so you can launch with a book. That went out the window. That was, it was, hey, we got a company here. Let's get our faces on the website. I was told long ago, when you start a company, don't put a staff up. Don't put staff up with pictures, because if those people leave, you got to go up there and rip stuff out, rip emails out, and it's a lot of work. And
we did.
Yeah, and the further it's like
all my fault.
Yeah. So it was,
Blame Brian.
Yeah,
everyone else does.
And I want to also say that unlike everybody else on this panel, I take zero responsibility for what happened. I was a victim, and I expect reparations. I've already received a Target merchandise card from Brian K. Morris. Only had $3 on it, but thank you, Brian, for my reparations.
No problem, man. The moon, the stars, anything for you, my friend.
The lesson that everyone needs to take away from I would like people to take away from it is, again, understand when you're starting these companies, I think Nita says the best, who you're getting in bed with, who you're, and talk and have these meetings. If we would have did this, then maybe there wouldn't have been a triangulation, but maybe the vote would have went the other way. Hey, you know what? Maybe you need to go because you seem to be the one holding the gasoline and the matches.
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to add to this is that we throw around the word ego a lot, and that definitely has something to play in it. But I think what we can all take away from this is that this is something that goes beyond just ego. We were dealing with a narcissistic personality disorder in play. We beat ourselves up over being manipulated, but people that have this type of personality traits are masters at that. And so we need to take that into consideration when you're feeling bad about your involvement in this and how to move forward from that. This was a special situation of a very high level of malevolence in what happened from beginning to end. Because even with what I've listened to mostly with an experience with Terraform and heard about Continuum, I can go back to my early beginnings with the gentleman and see it then. He was a super fan of Dreaded Dinosaur Man when I started out, and I can go back and remember some of those things and see that he was already trying to set me up to be an art resource for him, or some way to exploit my property to elevate whatever he was doing. So it was a special kind of egotistical manipulation that goes beyond just somebody simply being selfish and wanting more than what they had.
Okay.
Sure. I did see that there was a question about what happens to all the books printed with the Terraform logo. All the books printed with the Terraform logo are mine. There was no investment from Terraform Comics in any of the books that I did. Every dollar earned and every dollar spent on Hybrids, the Sons of Gods was mine. I earned those things, or from my backers who came in, who pledged, and they got books and they've got things from that. In fact, when the book number one, part one of The Killing Field launched, when it had ended, I was fulfilling when Terraform split, and a few of you actually had those books that went over to the Continuum, and you got those books in great condition. And I believe I sent in some extras because you were still a backer, you were still a supporter, and so all those books we're selling through them. Anything that has a Terraform logo, those things will be either reprinted with Arrow logos. The first 5 issues are being completely remastered. So they're going to be released through Arrow Comics starting in August. And so those books, if you get a Hybrids book that has a Terraform logo on it, I pray that one day it's very, very valuable for you. That's what I pray. And in turn, that'd be great for Randy and Arrow Comics as well. So, and it'd be great for Varian and Liberty Distribution as well. If those books are worth money one of these days, which means that the new books and the new distribution and the new Arrow Comics version of Hybrids is wildly successful. So that's what we're doing with those.
That's what we're hoping. Yes.
Yeah.
I guess we can close up.
Anybody else want to say anything before we go?
I do. I just want to say that I appreciate that we were all able to sit in the room and have this discussion, to stay on a timeline, to share our own experience, and not. I don't feel like any of us projected anything. We laid it out on the line, like this is what happened.
Yes, I think we did.
And I hope that, I mean, and the reason why we stream to so many places is because of our network. It's really important for as many people to see this, because to what Eric was saying, there's a lot of narcissism there, but it's also predatory behavior. And I shouldn't be, but I am still shocked by the people who are coming out of the woodwork saying this happened to me a couple years ago.
Right.
And had those conversations been out in the open, if we hadn't been so quiet about it, maybe it would have saved us a little bit of heartache, or a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
Communication's the key here.
Communication.
When you're in any type of relationship, marriage, corporate, whatever, the ability to be able to talk, to compare notes at once is the key. That when you start splintering, when things start getting divided, it's so easy to play the middle against the sides, and it turns into a clustered mess. Varian, did you want to say anything?
I was just going to say, I am also going back trying to check with people. I mean, there's people in the chat that have showed up tonight that, I was told had a problem with me. Oh, this person said this about you. This person doesn't like you. Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking at one right now, Martin Piero, who I haven't talked to in a while. I was told that Martin disliked me. And I'm like, I haven't said anything to Martin. He was on my show once. What did I say to that? I know I didn't smell bad. He can't smell me through the screen. What's the problem? So, I mean, it was like those things. So I now have to go back and have conversations. And I would tell anybody, if you don't like somebody in this industry, or you hear someone doesn't like you, sit down, get a private meeting with them and say, hey, I heard this thing and I want to clear it up, because it could just be a big confusion, or someone else is profiting off of your dislike for one another.
Exactly.
Somebody wants to drive that wedge and keep the separation working. And that's something that I mentioned to Brian earlier, back a while ago, when once the cameras stopped running. And so I said, Brian, we're sitting here comparing notes and connecting dots, and holy crap, all of this is all bullshit.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anything
Yeah,
else you
and-
want to add, Brian?
I do a couple things. One, I'd like to thank everyone on this panel for including me in here. I know that I was the first one to bail and was trying to leave this behind me, but thank you all for bringing me back in. I do appreciate that greatly, and thank you to everyone's reached out to get, hear this, get out my side of the story. And I do want to give a huge thank you to Randy for moderating this. He did
Yes,
a
fine job.
superlative job. I don't know when he's ever going to wear a tie again,
Yes.
but
Maybe for the awards coming up on September, thanks to Barry, and that's a whole other can of worms that we didn't take the time to get into.
Oh, that'll be the sequel, folks. But anyway, I just want to give a shout out. Thank you all, and thank you, Randy.
In closing, anybody else have anything to say before I close us out?
I do. I want people to. We're trying to leave the woodpile higher than we found it.
Yes.
This is not. I didn't want this to be an opportunity, like I said at the beginning, or kind of towards the beginning. I didn't want to do. I've been reluctant about speaking about this because I don't want to defame anyone's character, but I also want to speak truthfully because I see so many people being taken advantage of. I believed then that Rob had talent and that he had potential. And I really, truly, honestly believed that he wanted help unlocking those things. And I wanted to help him through that. I still believe that he can, because I don't believe that anyone is without redemption. I really don't. I will forgive continuously, but I only trust once. That is
the key.
That is unfortunate, but I'm so thankful that this group of people have been able to reconcile and get back into communication regularly and to be able to collaborate with each other. And I hope that everyone who listened and who's stuck with us through this, anyone that goes back through the playback, that they don't just see it, that we're not trying to dogpile one particular person. We were taken advantage of by one particular person. And I hope that you learn by the cautionary tale that some of the mistakes made were the splintering of communication, the not defining the roles as rigorously as we can, and not calling the baloney when you see it.
Yes.
The trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, and you've hopefully you learn from that. Hopefully you can take our cautionary tale.
Yep.
And move forward and apply it to your success in any industry that you choose to apply it to. I still pray daily.
Absolutely.
I still pray daily for Rob Anderson. I believe that he needs true friends, but he needs to love himself, and he needs to be able to get past these problems that cause him to burn so many bridges.
I think Nita should end it because she's
do.
really the person again. I think she should have the last word.
All right. Well, then no, you don't want to speak. Well,
I've said my piece. I just wanted everybody to get together, and I wanted the air cleared between us. And I agreed to do it live because, like Meredith said, nobody spoke up before, and we've heard countless tales since we've all been parted.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can just save one person from experiencing what I experienced, then I feel this has all been worth it.
I was raised in about as close to a cult as you can get. I've seen cult leaders. I've aware of the signs of what I've seen, and this is very, very scary to me because he's moved from Facebook to TikTok, where it reaches a younger audience and a younger crowd, and he's starting to try to groom other people, and that deeply, deeply concerns me. Again, we want to thank everybody that stuck with us, that listened. I want to personally tell you, we've laid a lot of cards on the table, but there's still a lot of things we have not talked about. There's a lot of individual tiny points that little nabs, jabs, and stuff here that we're going to be healing from for a long time to come, and a lot of things that we glossed over that might have been brought forth. So we do hope everybody learns from tonight's meeting. We wish only the best for everybody. Like Luke says, we don't wish ill or temperance on anyone. We just urge caution, deep caution on who you get into associations with. Obviously, you've seen tonight, there have been thousands that are lost in dollars, plenty of hours of creative time, of drama that's been soaked up by people. Nita just dropped out. And just it's our hope that in bearing our hearts out to you, that you pull something out of this of a lesson to keep it from happening again. Or that if you see it happening, that you speak up and let folks know that this just can't happen. We're in an industry where right now we're budding to a point with the alternative and the independent market where we can really make a mark with a wonderfully creative and communicative or communication form that we can't let be wallowed by stupid schoolyard drama and backstabbing. There has to be a communication out there between everyone about stuff that's happening out there. We really have to stop the crab buckets out there and the crabbing around. So anything else from anybody? That I've said my piece. I need to get off of this soapbox.
Yeah, no, just, if you have problems with people, reach out. Especially if anybody on this panel, that's been on this panel now, if you have problems, you've heard something, I'm going to say it's 100% not true. If you've heard some bad from people on this panel, reach out, contact them, and just say, hey, I heard this.
Yep.
And that's it.
There's probably a difference between what you think you know and what is in reality. So, and that's something that we've found over the. Anyway, let's not get started. I warned everybody not to get mad, not to lose their cool, and here I'm about to speak out and get mad and lose my cool. Instead,
Randy, deep breath.
Yeah, deep breath. Instead, because I've worked in this business since the 80s and have built up a reputation for, and you would think a work ethic that can be easily torn down by gossip and backstabbing and schoolyard drama. Anything else, Nita?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. I want to go out on two pieces that I've been saving for this, just to let folks know. And one of them is a quick clip from Rob on one of his weekend shows, and then finally the TikTok, the film that he just posted a couple of days ago, to show you where this mindset is. So in closing, we really want to thank you very much for listening. We deeply appreciate each and every one of you that are out there. We hope that you've learned from us, from our lesson, and we wish you only the very best. And like Varian always says, please, please leave this industry in a better condition than what you found it.
Yep.
Please. Varian, any last words? You jumped out.
No, I'm sorry. I'm here. No last words to me.
All right.
Thanks everybody for being here.
Take care, everybody. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next Tuesday on the Livewire program, and we wish everybody the very best. Any other words? Take care, everybody. Good night.
I mean, there was someone who literally told me that I stole their idea for what we're doing with Terraform, and I stole their logo. And anyone behind the scenes knew that the idea of what Terraform started out to be wasn't always what we became later. And the things that we became later were more the things that I wanted, and we worked towards some of the things, and we came together as a group.
Yay! Yay! Think about what you've accomplished. I fucking hate liars. Yes, that's why I sing this song. And if you hate people that manipulate, then you should sing along. If you're gonna waste my time with all the bullshit and the lies, then do not fucking even try to get to know me. You can tell me what I want to hear, but really I don't fucking care, because words are fucking worthless till you show me. So do all the fucking liars, fucking listen well to my words and get off your fucking high horse and be honest. Because when you stop manipulating, cheating, lying to, and playing people, life will be so great for you, I promise.